Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I'm Mike Graham and this is the Mike Graham Show. As you can see, the sign is, as you quite rightly have pointed out in the past, the right colour today. It is blue. Richard Tice is here. He's back because the last time you were on, somebody had turned it green.
It was green, Mike. I was very concerned something had happened to you. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you. Yeah, well, somebody had somehow sneaked in overnight, I think, and messed around.
Spy in the camp.
Because we can change the colour of it with this, you see. With all mod cons are here. But I'm not touching it.
Is there a sort of nice turquoise reform blue?
Well, you could give it a go. Have a go. See if you can make it more reform.
There we go. Right.
You know, because obviously Ofcom would normally object to that, but we don't have to worry about that. Is that more turquoisey? Would you say?
Well, that's nice.
That's quite nice, actually. I don't mind that. Yeah.
There you are. That's the reform blue.
Reform blue. Yeah. Yeah. Not to say that I'm in any way a reform shill. You know, this is just a message to anybody who might accuse me of such. Apparently, I'm friends with people in reform. Apparently, I go to the rugby with people from Reform. One of my family members works for Reform. These lies that have been put out about me is quite disgraceful. But anyway, here we are with my good friend Richard Tice.
Welcome back from your holiday.
Thank you very much indeed. And I was saying yesterday, we're only 2 days away now from the biggest by-election in the history of Britain, we're told. I mean, I don't know if you still
Certainly this century.
Certainly this century, yeah. And I was saying this yesterday on the show, that it's interesting, when you leave the country, you sort of realise quite how bad it is in all sorts of different ways, in terms of its infrastructure, its administration, the government, the cleanliness of it, the crime, you know, the problem with migrants, everything. You know, because Cyprus, where I was clean, the roads were brilliant, there were no potholes, there was no rubbish, people were walking about quite happily. You know?
And there's nothing more sort of descriptive of that than the quantity of litter and rubbish and graffiti that you see. That's why last week, whilst you were away, I launched a Cleaning Up Britain campaign for Reform.
Okay.
There was a picture of me hanging out a refuse truck that had been liveried up.
You haven't got
Reform Cleaning Up
Reform bin lorry now.
Absolutely. But
you're like the transport secretary of Reform. You've got a bus, you've got a taxi,
you've
got a
Tice
bin lorry.
Force 1, Tice Force 2,
brilliant.
now Tice Force 3, the bin lorry.
You're not allowed to have a private jet, of course, and you'd be accused of being an elitist.
No, but seriously, it is the quantity of rubbish and graffiti is symptomatic of the lack of respect for our environment. Whether it's our streets, our parks in our towns and cities and villages, all the open countryside, the quantity of rubbish is revolting. But also, when you just go up high streets that have all got their shutters from when the shops shut overnight. And if sometimes as I do, I sort of drive up to the constituency very early. You can drive up and there is just dozens and dozens of shuttered shops and the quantity of graffiti on them it's just revolting, actually. It's a sign of complete dereliction, disregard.
It's what I call civic breakdown, isn't it?
It is, the lack of civic pride.
There is no pride in people's areas where they live. So they don't care if they get messed up. They don't care if it's filthy or if there's rats running around or if there's graffiti. And it all sort of feeds on itself, doesn't it?
It feeds on itself. That is the issue. The litter feeds on itself. The graffiti feeds on itself. And it becomes a matter of civic challenge to see if you can put more graffiti up. And you've got to take it completely the other way.
Yeah.
And that's why we said, actually, we need to significantly increase the fines for those who are caught littering. Actually, fly tipping is another major problem.
Yeah.
And we said you should be able to just confiscate someone's car on second offence. For commercial tippers, much heavier fines, up to £50,000. And we have to create that sense that actually we've all got an investment in how our streets and our villages and our towns look and feel. Yeah. And it is a sign of the decline of the UK.
Yeah. When I go to visit my sister who lives in America, in this very lovely town outside of New Haven in Connecticut, and it's quite a wealthy area, yes, but it's beautiful. I mean, it is literally, people are outside, you can walk down the street any given morning, there's somebody hosing the sidewalk because it's in front of their house, or sweeping it, or cleaning it, or, you just don't see litter. There isn't any.
And that's because of that confidence, that sense of belief and pride and passion for their environment.
Yeah.
You get on so many streets now in our towns, and all you see is recycling bin after recycling bin outside everybody's houses. You've got 2 or 3 big bins,
Yeah.
and it's just led to a complete collapse. And particularly when you've got ever more HMOs appearing on streets, the occupants of those are much less likely to care about
and it's
to understand what's
overcrowding as
going
well,
on.
isn't it? It's in the cities in particular. There's just too many people, and so as you said, it sort of feeds on itself. And as one area becomes badly looked after, the next area then gets affected, the next area gets affected, and there's just too many people. I mean, that was another thing about Cyprus, and Cyprus is not perfect. I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure it's got its own problems. It's quite near Iran for a start, which is not great. But it's just not overcrowded. There's I think 1.2 million living in North and South Cyprus, right? Northern Cyprus is about 300,000, most of them in the south. But it's just, you can feel the space. There's room to breathe. You can drive on the roads. There was no traffic. There was no traffic jams. There was no cones. There were
and in fairness,
20 mile an hour
zones.
But
there's vast parts of the UK, rural areas, countryside, likewise. But in our towns and cities, we have to engender a completely different sense of this is our community. This is our street. This is our area, and we want it to be a lot smarter. And there's some wonderful volunteers and groups who do incredible things.
Yes.
Litter picking every Saturday. Lots of our councillors, for example, we're having a National Action Day on Saturday, July the 4th, and to try and sort of reinvigorate that. And councillors can actually set a huge example. So these are all the things that it's right at the grassroots.
One of the problems
very passionate.
that a lot of people talk to me about in terms of rubbish is the council, sort of refuse collection schedules are completely to cock all over the country. Where some places are saying, oh, well, we can't afford to pick up your rubbish more than once a month now, or more than once a fortnight, or and you've got to recycle this here, or we're going to take away the recycling facilities there. It's all a bit of a mishmash.
It's all a mishmash. Lots of different councils have different recycling regimes, and yes, I mean fundamentally, the days when you knew once a week all of your rubbish would be collected is a good thing. There is some good stuff. Just yesterday morning, I was down at the port of Tilbury, looking at the recycling that's going on of all wood waste that comes out of house refurbishments, kitchen upgrades, construction sites, the whole lot, and just seeing how that is actually being completely recycled, turned into a sort of pulp, and then used in a biomass energy centre at the Port of Tilbury, integrating electricity. So actually, there are some things that are going well.
I don't mind recycling if they're doing that with it. If they're actually generating some kind of energy with it, great.
So anyway,
but not if they're sending it on a slow boat to China.
Well,
they used to.
Exporting our rubbish is morally wrong.
Yeah.
And unless it's members of the Labour Party.
I was going to say about Keir Starmer. We've exported him to Evian.
We have.
I think we should douse him with some
his last G7 summit meeting with the other 6 members. Probably the last time he'll meet Donald Trump.
He's running around with a disguise, I'm told, so Donald Trump doesn't recognise him. So every time he turns up in the room, he's got a different mask on. So that Trump. There's a great picture that I put out last night on Twitter of them sitting at a table where Trump's sort of where you are, and Starmer's just rigidly looking over there. So as if to say, I don't look to the left because I'll see Donald Trump, and that won't be good.
Whilst you were away, I had a Prime Minister's question last Wednesday.
Did you?
And
well done.
So I stood up and basically listed a small fraction of his many, many failures.
Yeah.
And I said on that basis, the country's lost confidence in him. His own trade union members are now as likely or more likely to vote reform.
Yeah.
I said even his very quiet Labour backbenchers lost confidence. I said, when will he do us all a favour and resign?
And he said?
Oh, he launched back as you... I mean...
Did he mention Russia?
No, he didn't mention Russia, but he accused us of sort of stirring up all sorts of nonsense, which of course is absolute claptrap. Yeah. But that's what the Uniparty do. They're basically trying to prevent debate about the crisis of two-tier policing and these ridiculous training programs, race action plans that is actually positive. It's written down that you must positively discriminate in favour of ethnic minorities and against
and we've had David Lammy's fantastic
people.
Explanation, haven't we, of the Alice in Wonderland world of the Labour government, where he said that equality doesn't actually mean treating everybody equally.
Yeah, it was extraordinary. Talk about a word salad. I mean, I nearly crashed. I was driving at the time. It was that bad. I said, "I'm sorry. What's going on?" I know.
We've got a couple of clips. Should we have a look at a clip, Pooch? How about this one? We've got because he goes for the tough interviews. Does old Keir Starmer? He went on with Kat Deely, I think, yesterday.
Very difficult.
Who even she's noticed that there's a bit of a problem going on in Britain. So if Kat Deely's noticed it, you're in trouble. Have a look at what she had to say.
Though at the moment is the country feels so volatile. and so divided at the moment in a way that I actually don't recall for the entire... I'm 49. I don't remember the country feeling like this. What are you going to do to change it?
I think this is the defining issue in politics at the moment. I think it's less left-right in politics.
Yeah.
It's between those that want to pull people together and believe in the British spirit and those that want to tear it apart. My own view is that the vast majority of people in this country are reasonable, tolerant, live and let live, diverse, and given half the chance, we will help each other out. There are extraordinary acts that people do for other people, but there are also the everyday acts in every village, in every town, in every city where people look after each other. Against that, you've got forces that want to tear our country apart. You saw it in response to Henry Novak, this terrible killing of an 18-year-old, which again, with a boy of 17, really, you know, I felt very strongly as a human being. I met his father, his mother, and his stepmother. But the idea that some politicians, rather than saying, what's the problem here and how do we fix it, looked at it and said, what's the problem here and how do we exploit it? Saw the same thing in Northern Ireland last week. This is something in politics that we have to fight. It is the politics, it's the fight of our lives. I don't think it's left-right politics anymore. I think it is the politics of bringing the country together, recognising who we really are.
I love all of that, but how are you going to do it?
But I mean, social media is part of this. Misinformation is all over social media.
So trying to control the tech firms with regards.
I will, yeah. Sorry about that. We should have had the Starmer alert before playing the Keir Starmer clip. Typical Starmer there, by the way, moaning about misinformation, disinformation, most of which put out by him. You know, because even John Healey, his former Defence Secretary, quit his job last week because of the fact that Starmer lied to him. Starmer said, we're going to give you more money for defence. Don't worry, we can't give it to you right now. We'll give it to you next year. He said this to him last year. Gets to this year, he goes, sorry, you haven't got the money. The misinformation all came from him.
I mean, you saw there him having a go basically at reform.
Yeah.
But actually, you can't solve a problem if you're not prepared to admit the problem exists in the first place. And the problem of two-tier policing, which we've been talking about, is what people are so angry about. And he just refuses to recognise that issue. Yeah. And it's just absurd. John Healey, I mean, but as you say, the issue around defence, and I had some words in the Commons yesterday, not only John Healey resigning, but also Al Khan's, one of his junior ministers, their two resignation letters were utterly devastating because John Healey said that the Prime Minister was unable to fund the defence requirements to keep us safe, and he said that the Chancellor was unwilling. And, I mean, that was bad enough. And then Al Khan said the Defence Investment Plan was fighting yesterday's war, not tomorrow's war. As he resigned, he also was very, very critical of the dreadful Northern Ireland legacy bill, which will be so devastating for our veterans. But those two resignation letters, absolutely extraordinary. Here is some up-to-date gossip for you.
Oh, go on.
Straight from the tea rooms yesterday. I've been saying this for the last few days. Watch out for some form of duo leadership campaign from John Healey and Al Khan's. Apparently, John Healey has got 81 signatures.
Really?
So whether or not that's true, but that was the gossip in the tea rooms of the House of Commons yesterday.
So he would be going up against Andy Burnham, presumably.
He would be going up against, if Andy Burnham wins in the Makerfield by-election, which obviously is very, very close. Those are the betting odds. It's a close two-horse race. Let's wait and see. But regardless of whether Burnham wins or loses, there's going to be a leadership contest. And
pretty soon, by the sounds of
very, very soon. Burnham, it appears, if he wins, is going to go very early, like that weekend, in order to try and prevent others from getting ahead of steam, like John Healey and Al Khan's. I think this is going to get very messy, very quickly, whether or not Burnham wins. Quite extraordinary. But look, and yesterday, the new Secretary of State for Defence, Dan Jarvis, well-meaning sort of chap, former paratrooper, great track record in...
He's a former mayor, I think, as well, isn't he, of somewhere?
Yes, and you know, a brave and gallant member of the House of Commons. And he tried to sort of pretend that all was fine.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the Chancellor sat beside him at the beginning of his statement.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. I tweeted out, noticed the Chancellor there trying to pretend all is fine and dandy, and they're having a bit of a love-in. Anyway, she stood up and left halfway through the statement before I'd been called. So I stood up and I said, it was nice to see the Chancellor briefly in the House of Commons. Can I take it the fact that she left halfway through means that she's only half committed to funding the Defence Investment Plan?
Yes,
the Labour lot went nuts.
That's exactly right, isn't it? I mean, I'm sorry, I've used up all the money.
Yes.
But I mean, again, being totally disingenuous there, talking about the Novak family, who he said he invited into Downing Street. Like, first of all, he hadn't spoken to the Novak family since the terrible tragedy of their son's killing, murder in December of last year. He hadn't had any conversations with them. Siobhan White, the mother of Rhiannon White, who was murdered by a migrant, is still waiting to get a letter back from Downing Street that she sent in months and months and months and months ago. They refused to see her. They refused to answer any of her questions. And
Starmer was so slow coming out of the blocks about Henry Novak's murder when the trial was finishing, and he was the last of all the political leaders to refer to it, and he basically. You imagine if that had been someone in reverse. If the police had treated an ethnic minority in that way and handcuffed them and said, "I don't think you have, mate," being stabbed. I mean,
they'd have all
the
resigned,
left would have been all over it.
They would have all resigned.
There would have been mass resignations in the police. But I mean, the whole thing absolutely stinks.
Yeah. What about this, though, just to go back to defence for a minute? Peter Kyle, obviously also attempting to go for the win on the Dunce's cap for the week, where he went on television to say that he thought that the new defence plan was absolutely brilliant. When he was asked if he'd seen it, he said he hadn't seen it.
Which was embarrassing for him. But I mean, what a dunce.
Really?
But then you also had in their resignation letters confirmation that neither John Healey nor Al Khan's had any involvement in preparing the Defence Investment Plan that they were responsible for. And I thought, what's going on
here?
But
when Peter Kyle was asked whether or not Al Khan's and John Healey had seen it, he said, "Oh yes, they've seen it." And so Naga Benchetti goes, "Oh, so they've seen it and they resigned, but you haven't seen it and you think it's good?"
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was actually amazing. Masterly questioning.
I mean, Lammy of the Day. We should have a Lammy of the Day award. But let's talk about Makerfield, because obviously that's the big thing that's happening in 2 days' time. You guys will be, no doubt, campaigning like crazy over the next sort of 48
hours. I've been there 4 or 5 times.
What I've been saying to an awful lot of people is that it's quite hard to read in a way, because it sounds to me as though there's quite a lot of undecideds. There's quite a close run 2-horse race going on. It would appear that there's maybe 4 or 5 points between you and Burnham, depending on what you look at.
Turnout is going to be very high. That's the first thing. As was turnout high during the local elections. And there are quite a few people registering to vote who will vote who don't normally vote.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Right. And are those people largely restored, do you think, or not?
No, they are. Look, this is a 2-horse race. The total number of non-Labour or non-Reform votes will not exceed 10%.
Okay.
And that's my top tip. And I think they'll all get low single. Everybody else will lose their deposit.
Yeah.
Everybody else will lose the deposit except Reform and except Labour.
So you think Restore will lose their deposit as well?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of nonsense being talked about the numbers. People realise that fundamentally you will vote in order to prevent something happening. That's how it'll play out, and it'll just depend who gets the vote out on the day. So we just got to push all the way until 10 o'clock on Thursday evening.
Yeah, and I mean, is it likely to be one of those very tight races where there might be a recount, in which case, it could be a long night?
Yes, it could be. We just hard to know at this stage. And we have a good track record of tight votes and recounts. I mean, just May 25, Sarah Pochin, on the first vote, she won by 4. Yeah. And then there was a recount, and she increased her majority by 50%.
I was going to say,
to 6.
To 6, yeah, absolutely right. Well, it's all they all count, as they say, right?
Every vote matters. That's the key thing,
and that is the thing that people do forget, and that is why. I mean, a lot of people, funnily enough, are starting to have these conversations about how was it that Labour got in? When Starmer goes on and on and on about how he's doing his duty, he's got this service that he has to serve the public who've elected him. Hardly anybody did elect him. 20% of the people elected him, and that's kind of our own fault in a way for not turning.
Well, I did warn people in January 2024 when I introduced the new word to the Oxford Dictionary, Starmageddon.
Yes.
And it sort of caused a bit of a laugh. None of us realised, including myself, just how sort of preemptive and how right that would be, how quickly. I mean, it's fallen off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's not even 2 years, Mike.
No.
It's not even 2 years.
Quite remarkable.
Feels like a generation.
It really does.
Under Starmageddon.
And also the speed and sort of acceleration of decline has really gone mad in the last 6 months, hasn't it? It feels like
it
that.
really has. It's like a reverse hockey stick of decline. And that's why so many people are now saying, how can this go on for another 3 years, 3.25 years? And I think more and more people recognise it just, it's hard to see this continuing. Something will happen. I mean, there's definitely going to be a change of leader.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a bet who's going to be the new leader. I think there's so many runners and riders out there as we sit here today.
But I mean,
it could all be completely different in just a week's time.
It could be. But I mean, the trouble is all of them look even more useless and terrifying. I mean, can you imagine Andy Burnham in charge of the
Captain
defence of the realm?
I mean, he's some people call him the King of the North. I call him the King of the U-turn.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
the
just
King of North London, maybe.
Well, he just flip-flops on everything. I mean, he flip-flopped on whether to introduce a clean air zone in Manchester. He's flip-flopped on whether to pay compensation to the WASPy women. He's flip-flopped on whether he wants to rejoin the European Union, about his support for migrants. Flip-flop.
Well, my favourite fact about Andy Burnham was revealed by Nadine Dorries, actually, who wrote in her column in the Mail a couple of weeks ago that she'd be more convinced about his plan to be the King of the North and the man that wants to make Makerfield great again or whatever, if he hadn't asked 26 previous MPs if he could run in their constituency before he got to Makerfield, right? So it's not as if he's suddenly gone
27th on his target list.
27th. I love Makerfield. 27th in all of the places that I love in Britain. He's a very unconvincing man.
But he's if you just look at his track record, I mean, he failed as a health minister under Blair.
Yeah.
He failed twice to win the leadership.
Yep.
And he's just vacuous.
Right.
He hates making decisions. He must have splinters in his backside
he must.
from the number of fences that he's sat on over his political career. Has he ever had a proper job, Mike?
No.
Never done anything.
He joined the Labour Party at the age of 15. He was he was in a think tank from the point at which he left university. He's never done anything other than work inside the Beltway, if you like. He worked for Chris Smith, I think, in his first appearance as the Blair Culture, Media and Sport Minister, Secretary of State in 97. And he then went from there into being an MP, into being a minister, into continuing to be a shadow minister under Miliband.
Totally unmemorable.
Just totally unmemorable. There's nothing he's done. This is why I was wondering, who are all these people who go, he was such a great MP? No, he wasn't. He really wasn't a great MP.
He really wasn't. He was just a nobody. He's not a great orator, and he's just, he's got lucky.
Yeah.
Because the rest of them are so utterly useless and clueless. And look, it may well not be him. In fact, I think the best bet at the moment is to bet against Andy Burnham being the next leader of the Labour Party.
Even if he wins the seat.
Even if he wins, and that's a 50-50. It might be 52-48 coming up to the 10th anniversary.
I see that.
Look, the reality is that I just think very often he who wields the sword doesn't take the crown.
And of course, the other problem for them is if he did win, you then have an opportunity to become or to stand.
There's a mayoral contest.
There's a mayoral contest for
which would happen incredibly quickly.
Yeah.
Has to happen by August the 6th. And
have you got a candidate lined up for that?
Well, just patience is a virtue.
I've got to ask you, though.
Yeah, of course you have to ask.
I'll take that as a yes.
And we will have a great candidate.
It's not me, by the way, in case Dan Wootton's watching.
It's Dan Wootton.
It's Dan Wootton, yeah.
It certainly won't be Dan Wootton.
Yeah.
And we'll have a great candidate. So it becomes an air war. It's like a 5-week campaign, very tight spending limit, but we would hope to win that. And if a reform mayor of Greater Manchester, I mean, that would just be wonderful. So we'll be going for that hard, absolutely. And so there's pluses and minuses to everything, Mike.
There is. Well, this is the thing. The great thing about politics is that, you're only down for so long and you come back up again, as many of them do. Let's have a look at what great plans the Chancellor, you mentioned the Chancellor there. She's been out and about. She's been very quiet, old Rachel Thieves, of late. So we spotted this yesterday. She's got a great plan for saving our economy. Check this out.
This is big news for our farmers.
I know what a big deal red diesel prices are for our rural communities and farming communities, especially with the price of red diesel almost doubling earlier in the year. That is why I have announced that I will reduce the duty on red diesel by a third. That comes in today and is funded for the rest of this year. I would like to thank each and every Labour rural MP who raised this with me. This is another example of rural Labour MPs working with a Labour Chancellor as part of a Labour government to deliver for our rural and farming communities.
She's so stilted. I mean, wonder, it's just unbelievable.
I know. I mean, it's a red diesel. I mean, that's the best they can do. I mean, they've really decimated the farming communities of the country.
Completely
they've
decimated.
Made them, in some cases, tragically take their own lives. And she's giving them a third off the tax on red diesel. I mean, really?
It's desperate stuff. But the rural Labour MPs are desperate, and they have all been lobbying her really, really intensely to do something because they all know they're going to lose the seats. But she just, I mean, this lady, she's got no idea about what's really going on out there at all.
Well, just before I went away, there was a horrific, which didn't really get much traction, so I presume that even the Labour government decided to squash it. She came out on the front page of the Telegraph and said that she wanted to use PFI to build a load of houses. And you kind of went, hang on a minute, do you not remember that PFI was a massive disaster under Tony Blair, where they built a load of hospitals, including at the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, I think it was, and they're still paying off the debts today.
Oh, the way they organised them or orchestrated them, if you've got a successful joint venture partnership, that can work very nicely. But the way they were procured and done, they were...
Well, it was the worst of all worlds.
It was the worst of all worlds.
Yeah.
And, you end up with sort of £5 loo rolls and £5 box of tissues on the side of the bed.
My understanding of the PFI deal, particularly the one in Edinburgh, because it was when I was in Scotland that we discovered how bad it was that they did something like, they borrowed a load of money or loaned a load of money to a building company to build it and then leased it back at a cost that was so high that they'll never ever be able to pay it off.
Some of the various deals just horrific, absolutely horrific. Meanwhile, Thames Water at the other end of the scale.
Oh yeah,
that's another disaster that's in the
thing,
papers.
I mean, we talk here a lot about the way that the media is changing and the way that it needs to change. And Nigel Farage this week announced that he's doing a Substack now. Because he's so fed up talking to the mainstream media who keep just twisting everything that he says. I mean, a great example with Matt Chorley, making up that quote. We got him on plank. We had him on Plank of the Week. I think, in fact, he might have won it last week. I'm not sure. But making up, white cold rage out of a completely different word, right? And we talk about this. I was listening to 5 Live on the way in this morning for my sins because Times Radio is so awful that I can't bring myself to do it. And they were talking about Thames Water, saying things like, well, of course, they've got a big debt problem and, they leak a lot of water into the ground and this could be a chance for them to be reset and it could, and they don't actually talk about the facts of the matter and how badly run it is and how many people are taking money out of it.
Yeah, it's been
literally profiteering from the amount of money
it's been a grotesque, egregious example of a private equity completely taking the mickey. Yeah. And we've been saying for some time, you've got to call time on this, you've got to take the whole thing back into public ownership for £1. Yeah. Caveat emptor, the shareholders and the debt holders, they knew what they were doing and they knew that they'd leveraged it up to the eyeballs. And the quantity of huge fees being taken out, and now they're trying to take out almost £1 billion worth of fees as part of this restructuring. Right. And we have to have the courage to say, no, enough's enough. You had your chance, you blew it, you've screwed up. Sorry, folks. Right. Caveat emptor, you learn your lesson. Right. We want to do joint ventures, we want to work successfully, but if you try and take the mickey, then don't be surprised if someone comes back and says, you're done, folks.
Yeah, and the fact they're trying to negotiate so that they don't have to pay any more fines.
Yeah, tells you all you need to know.
Well, exactly. Knowing that would then mean that they wouldn't care, as they now don't care, about polluting the rivers and the sea and all the rest of it. No.
There's a much better way of organising this, where you can have the right financing structure, partial public ownership, and then long-term pension fund, patient capital, and yes, bring in some brilliant private sector management. Yeah. And if they do a great job, remunerate them well. Yeah. No one objects to that. Do a good job, work hard, you get paid well for it, right? Yeah. But if you screw up, then there's consequences.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened here.
Yeah, it's an absolute shambles, a mess, just like the government. We'll be watching Keir Starmer later, as we said. He's over in Evian at his presumably his last G7 summit. And it'll be probably quite amusing for the next couple of days. But Richard, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you very much for having me.
For coming in. And we got through an awful lot there. I'm sure we could probably talk for another hour, but we'll do that after Thursday, I dare say.
Absolutely. We'll be back to
Friday
come
morning.
And analyse it. Might be a bit weary, but let's see.
Absolutely right. Richard,
Nice to see you.
thank you very much indeed. We'll be back having a look at what's in the papers, generally speaking, because we didn't really get around to the social media story. We'll get to that. It's on some of the front pages this morning. Lee Nalalingam is here with some stories of his own as well. Let's get some news meanwhile, shall we, with Edward Hughes.
I'm Edward Hughes with your Tuesday Bulletin. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a major crackdown. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube will be banned for under 16s by next spring, one of the toughest measures worldwide. Tech firms are pushing back, while ministers lobby international partners. In security news, BBC investigations link Russia to arson attacks on Starmer's properties, with evidence of efforts to stoke UK tensions. Separately, UK forces seized a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the Channel. Economy. The UK saw a 0.1% contraction in April, partly blamed on the recent Iran conflict fallout. Other notes include ongoing political pressures on defence spending and local incidents like a nursery car crash. Politics, security and child safety dominate the agenda. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Thank you very much indeed. Edward Hughes, a bit serious today, so he's obviously got the memo. We told him to stop messing us about and stop with the crazy behaviour. He seems to have settled down. Is he still in the counselling?
He is, and he's on the wagon at the moment.
Is he on the wagon? Yeah, excellent.
He's on the wagon.
Top plan.
One day so far.
One day at a time. You know, it's a 12-step programme. You carry on. You've got all our support, as you can imagine, because that's the sort of company we are. We look after our people very carefully here. Coming up later on, I'll be talking to Ted Newsom. I'll also be talking to Will Hodson. I'll also be talking to Robert Oulds from the Bruges Group as well. There's lots going on, and Major Alex Watts too. Also, I'll be telling you about something I bought yesterday, which I'm already regretting. More to follow on that, but it's one of those things, you know, when you buy something and you didn't really mean to buy as much of it as you did. I told you yesterday about all the bananas that arrived at my house. This is something similar, but I actually voluntarily bought it for myself in a supermarket. Crazy. Anyway, let's talk now to Lee Nalalingam, who's here. Lee, good morning, Mike. Good to see you. Thank you very much for coming in. Looking through the papers this morning, there's a lot of different stories to talk about, but interestingly enough, and I know that you take a great interest in a lot of stuff that goes on at local council level as social workers. There's a terrible story on the front of the Mail and the Sun. The 8 missed chances to save baby Preston from evil adopted fathers, and this is where, once again, social workers are being blamed for not keeping a proper eye on what was actually going on before their very eyes, because, you know, as usual with people like these, they're very good at kind of masking the truth, if you like, and a lot of times social workers don't go to the difficult houses because they just go to the ones that are easy.
Yeah, go to the ones that are easy. It seems to be a familiar pattern, right? Whether it is this awful story about this poor child, whether it is Henry Novak, whether it is Axel Radapana, you know, it's just a consistent pattern of authorities missing these things because they don't want to have the difficult conversations. And we've got to get past that because if you don't, then this is going to continue to get worse. And I don't know how you fix that. I don't know what the right way is to doing it without just firing everybody and starting again.
I've worked in this business a long time, and there have been so many of these stories going all the way back to Baby P, back in Islington, I think it was. And it's the lack of responsibility that nobody wants to be held responsible for anything that happens in the public sector. And if you work in a structure, in a company, normally speaking, you have to answer to somebody.
Yes.
You know, you've worked in many big organisations, right? And the idea that you are not supervised would be ridiculous, right? Somebody's going to come to you, however important you are, and knock on your door and go, sorry, Lee, what are you doing about this? You're right? And if you just weren't there, or you didn't bother answering the memo, or you said, oh, don't worry, everything's fine, eventually you'd be found out. But in the public sector, that doesn't seem to happen.
I fully agree with that. And I'd argue that bigger politics has almost become that as well. It's almost accountability versus those who believe that it's nobody's fault. right? You could almost divide right and left now along those lines.
Totally.
Around personal responsibility versus, oh, well, you know, I had to steal things because, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
And these poor children are the ones paying the price. And just as your dad, it just makes me very, very angry. It's,
I mean, this particular case, you've got these two men who were in a homosexual relationship, it would seem. Jamie Varley, 37, his boyfriend, John McGowan Fazakali. They were given little Preston Davy to look after. Over a period of 4 months, the pure evil pair physically, psychologically and sexually assaulted the child under the noses of social workers. I find it just really, really hard to read these kind of stories.
And I guarantee again, there was someone somewhere that didn't want to raise the story because they didn't want to be seen as bigoted or discriminatory or so on within that. It's it's just a disease almost that's infected our society of just, there are bad people of all different kinds of backgrounds and beliefs and
in this
sexuality
case,
and
unlike some
else.
other cases where people have been sort of not investigated because either they were considered to be difficult or troubled or from a particular ethnic group, these two men, it would appear, were not investigated because they were gay, right? And this is Oldham Council who are being held responsible here. Varley was a textiles teacher who was also head of his year and safeguarding at a comprehensive school.
I believe it.
He was the lead safeguarding person, right? And they were both in the end done for murder. The other guy, McGowan Fazakli, was an accounts manager for a finance firm. So they were sort of middle class. And this is the thing that, you know, they were assumed to be okay, right? But I just, incredible. Let me find this one particular subject. Yeah, a post-mortem examination found Preston, who was just 13 months old when he died, suffered more than 40 injuries, including 30 visible bruises and serious internal injuries to his throat and his bottom.
You know what? I think I've just thought of a way to fix this.
Yeah.
What we need to start doing is pass a law. If something like this happens, the social worker or whoever was involved is treated the same as the person who actually committed it.
Yeah.
You know, let's see then how quickly they are to intervene and whether or not they're worried about potentially hurting someone's feelings rather than protecting the child.
Yes. Let's talk a bit about the other big story from yesterday, which is on the front of the Times today. Age checks on phones to access social media. I mean, there was a massive backlash to Keir Starmer's ludicrous announcement yesterday, because even though it's not likely to come in probably until the spring of next year, even Starmer has admitted that the law won't work.
It won't work.
But he actually said, and I mean, this is where you know you've entered into kind of, you know, Gulliver's Travels land, where he said, look, I know that the legislation is probably going to be ineffective, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't introduce it. And you kind of go, what?
Well,
what is the point of that?
And that's pretty much where we are, really.
Yeah. That's like saying, I'm going to put a fence up over there, but in a minute somebody's going to run through it with a car, and so I'm going to put it up anyway.
Yep, exactly that. And that's where this government is. It's just government by, we've had an idea. It might make a good headline, or it might make someone happy, so let's do it even if it doesn't work. It's absolutely farcical. We know it's not going to work. I think in Australia it was 60 to 70% of kids in Australia are still using social media 6 months after because there were these crazy things with VPNs and everything else that allow you to get around it.
The weird argument they're making is that basically it's illegal for 14-year-olds to have a drink. It doesn't mean that they won't have a drink, but it means that it's less likely that most of them will. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, but that's already in existence. You wouldn't bring that law in if it wasn't in existence, would you? You wouldn't make it illegal for 14-year-olds to drink if it wasn't already illegal, if you know what I mean.
And how many of them have been prosecuted or charged or whatever?
But that's the other thing. You know, what are you going to do if you find out that some 14-year-old has been looking at social media? You're going to haul them out of the house and lock them up?
And can you imagine that backlash of, Sally's been sent to prison because she had a secret Instagram account?
And also YouTube answered very quickly yesterday, as I'm sure some of the other social media companies will do, very, very fast. They said, you know, YouTube is a massive teaching aid all over the world. You know, people, I mean, I was getting messages from people saying that their kids have learned how to do all sorts of things on YouTube.
They have.
Because there's all sorts of tutorials. You can train yourself to do almost anything on YouTube. You know, apparently take your own teeth out. You know.
That'd be an interesting one to watch, actually.
You know, he's done that. I didn't say that at random.
Mike, we're going to do a YouTube tutorial on VPN.
Actually, we are. Yes, that's a good idea. We are going to do that because, have a look at this. This is Nick Ferrari's show yesterday. On the subject of social media bans and the subject of how easy it is to get a VPN. Have a look. Sorry, it's sorry.
Number 4.
In Australia, the tech companies have not done enough to police accounts. They simply haven't done enough, and the fear of enforcement and fines hasn't been enough to persuade them to do it either. But the biggest challenge here, and the absolute elephant in the room, and admittedly, the Prime Minister there did admit that there were problems with technology, Nick. I'm going to show you just how quickly it is to put a VPN on. I've done it. I am now in Boardman in the United States. My phone is not in London. I could circumvent any of the current rules that are being put in place. Now, that is the challenge with this. Now, admittedly, I needed to install a VPN on my phone, and a parent or somebody would have to pay for the service. But once you've installed it, it takes 2 seconds to activate that, and that's on any mobile device. If the government start telling us VPNs are evil, they're advising their own people to use them to protect data and security if they work from home.
That's Will Guyatt, who's a technology expert there, talking to Nick Ferrari about how easy it is to get a VPN. And you don't have to wear green glasses, by the way, either, to get the VPN. But we will be giving you a tutorial on YouTube. I don't think it will be me that does it, because I famously am not the world's most tech assisted person.
You how to do it.
But it'll be somebody telling me how. Okay, all right. And I mean, I know people that have got them, and I know how easy they are to use. And a lot of people already have been uneasy, shall we say, about the fact that there's this government overreach as to what you're watching, what you're looking at, in recording
going down the whole digital
you do.
ID route as well. It's a very easy way to bring in digital ID.
Yeah.
And look, I have some sympathy with the concerns. I'm a parent. I've got a 5-year-old. I completely understand the concerns around wanting to keep your kids safe and so on.
Yeah.
But my question is, what are the parents doing? If you don't want your child on it, don't let them use it.
Right.
It's really not rocket science.
You're the parent.
Yeah, they seem to have forgotten
Yeah.
that. And again, back to my point around accountability.
Right.
It's very simple.
I mean, somebody said to me yesterday, you know, if your 14-year-old came home absolutely smashed out of their face, drunk, you wouldn't blame the government, would you?
But
you'd go, you're not doing that again, and you'd ground them, or you do whatever you want to do.
But this is part of the problem. There are parents now that will be like, well, what can I do? I can't control what they do when they're not in the house or so on. It's like, well, okay, then you're not doing a very good a job as a parent, are you? And again, we need to bring back accountability.
Yes.
It's not...
And, maybe for the kids, they need to have some accountability for themselves.
Correct.
And, maybe you have to teach them as a parent how to be resilient, how to be independent, how to be responsible. Otherwise, if you're going to say to me as a 14 or 15-year-old, my kids are now a bit older, oh, well, you never told me I shouldn't do that.
Yep.
Well, I never told you to throw yourself under a train. So,
exactly that.
You're not an idiot. So learn something about life as you go.
No, exactly that. I've got a sister who is 16. So my parents divorced and remarried. And so I've got a very big age gap, 25 years, I think.
Wow.
And we have some of these conversations with her around the dinner table on a Sunday at my dad's. And shit, why would people do that? It's stupid because we've taught her to not be stupid, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's really not rocket science. And I want to shine a mirror at some of those parents. And do you know be a bit controversial here, do you know the worst parents I've met since becoming a parent are those Islington types. When we go down that way. And they are like, well, I can't possibly tell my 6-year-old what to do because they're having feelings. It's like, no, your kid's a brat. You haven't enforced any kind of discipline at all.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to that.
Yeah. And also, while you're at it, take him out of that dress, because he's got no right to do that either. I mean, that's the other problem. A couple of other stories to talk about. One on the front page of the Telegraph today, a biographer of Winston Churchill has accused the National Portrait Gallery of a barefaced lie over its claim that the wartime Prime Minister deliberately starved Indians. This is one of those stories that has been doing the rounds for a while because, those who hate Britain and who hate Churchill say that he's responsible for the Bengali famine, which happened during the Second World War. But of course, it's not true because he did not block ships going anywhere near Bangladesh, as it wasn't then in those days. Of course, it was India. He did not willfully inflict mass starvation on India in 1943, and yet the National Portrait Gallery has been pumping this story out as if it's true, because of course it is, the woke view of the world.
It is the woke view of the world.
Churchill was bad.
I mean, again, what do we think the bloke was doing? He was sat there in a room in the middle of a war and went, you know what I'm going to do? Let's just go and starve millions of people. It's insanity.
I know.
Decisions have to be made. There are unintended consequences. Like, there was there a famine? Yes. Did people die? Yes. Did he intentionally try and kill them? Oh, no, of course he didn't.
Well, the difficulty was that apparently there was a problem with shipping in the area because there was a war on.
Exactly.
And so the passage of ships, which was bringing food to the people of India, which would normally have stopped them from being starved, wasn't possible. But it was nothing to do with Churchill. It was everything to do with the fact that there was a war going on. And that the ships were not safe to travel.
And that's it. But everyone likes to look back and moralise.
But nobody blames India for the famine, which is probably what they should do, because if the people of India didn't have enough food to eat, whose fault would that be if you were in India?
Yeah.
You know,
again, but
let's blame a guy in London.
Well, that's the uncomfortable conversation. It's just like when they go on about slavery and apparently Britain are the bad guy, even though it's going on for centuries, millennia beforehand. Apparently, we invented it all.
Yeah.
We're the only ones who did anything wrong.
Even though Britain actually did away with it. Britain was actually the country that stopped it.
Exactly that.
You know. The other one that quite a few of the papers have picked up on, of course, is what we call the firebombing trial. The Russian diplomat, 23-year-old Russian diplomat, has been linked to the firebombing of Sir Keir Starmer's home following a lengthy investigation. 2 Ukrainian-born men yesterday were convicted at the Old Bailey of conspiring to commit arson over a string of attacks targeting the Prime Minister. Very weird story, this. I mean, we covered it as well as we could, but it was quite difficult to get at the facts of the case, you know. Not because of, and a lot of people were thinking it was a conspiracy, that everybody was covering up for Keir Starmer. How is it that these young men who appear to be sort of wannabe models knew the Prime Minister? How did they know where he lived? How did they know what car he used to drive? How did they know about the other property? And the Mail has done quite an interesting sort of investigation into it, because they've sort of picked up on what an awful lot of the chatter was. I'll just try and find it here as we are speaking. But yeah, this one. Russian spy orchestrated arson attacks on the Prime Minister, then started a wild conspiracy theory that it was revenge by 2 Ukrainian rent boys. Because that was kind of what was the narrative, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That, you know, the only possible explanation for this story was that Starmer had somehow known these characters in a dark room somewhere, or in a sauna, or some kind of gay club.
Yeah.
And that somehow they had not been paid for whatever it was he did, and that they decided to blow up his house.
I think, I remember that.
All of which, of course, is not true.
Well, so we're told. No,
yeah.
But
listen, it was around the time of no evidence to suggest that it's true.
No, correct. And it was around the time of all of the Lord Ali stuff as well, I think, from memory. And again, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I read as well.
It's just a very odd story.
Was it one of them paid like 20 quid, I think I read, for to write something on a mosque as well, and so on. And it's just like, it's just trying to process all of that.
The thing that puzzles me about the story, basically, is that it doesn't appear to have a reason for happening. You know, it's like one thing to say there's a 23-year-old Russian diplomat at the heart of it all, causing trouble. Yeah. But what was he trying to do? What was he trying to achieve? Was he trying to blackmail Keir Starmer? Was he just trying to be a nuisance? I don't know.
I don't know. It's one of those where it just doesn't add up, right? Even if you take that at face value, are a bunch of Ukrainian male models, you know, for 20 quid going around selling things on fire because Russia paid them to do so?
Yeah.
Possibly. I just find it very hard to square that circle.
But it's just, I mean, if it's nothing else, it's another strange and querulous kind of mark against the Prime Minister.
It is.
And the strange world that he seems to inhabit. You know, we saw him at the weekend at the Trooping of the Colour, sitting with his wife, looking as miserable as you've seen anybody look. And she looks even more miserable than he does.
Yeah.
And you just think, what is going on there?
Well, if the rumours are to be true around him and his missus, then...
Well, it's certainly all very strange. All very strange indeed. You've got a little story for us, though, because I know that if for those of you who don't know what Lee does, he does an awful lot of auditing of public money. Sends a lot of FOIs, freedom of information requests, into various different councils and public bodies to find out exactly what they're spending money on. And you've discovered that quite a lot of wastage in the NHS who have just given a load of money to their new striking doctors, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
Spending an awful lot of money on translation services.
They are. So, bit of an exclusive for you, Mike. So, I mean, the NHS spends millions and millions of pounds every year on translation. I think it's £100,000 a day. But new contract signed last week, the week before, from West Hertfordshire NHS Trust. £500,000 on translation. And I have two very...
£500,000 quid?
£500,000
Is that in a year?
Phased over.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. But
it doesn't really matter. And I always have two issues with this. I mean, look, forget about the fact that these people obviously don't speak English. I've got two very simple questions. One, we all have a device in our pocket that we use to translate for free.
Yeah.
And two, if we go abroad and need medical treatment, we have to pay for our own translation.
Right.
So if we have to pay for our own, Well, there's a precedent set there, so surely if anybody needs translation, then it seems fair that they also have to pay for their own.
Well, you would think.
And if they don't have the money, well, we literally all have a device in their pocket for free.
Yeah, well, Nigel Farage has said this in the past week, actually. You know, we are the only country in the world where if you come here illegally, not only do you get to stay, but you get access to benefits.
Benefits,
and a free translator, priority medical treatment, whether it's dental or whether it's a GP surgery or A&E. And not only do you get that paid for, and in fact, not only have we all got a phone that translates things, you might even get a free phone.
Yep. Oh, they do get a free phone.
There's no other country in the world. I mean, like I say, I'm going to bore people about it. I'm going to be banned probably from talking about Cyprus soon because I keep mentioning it. But, you know, if I rocked up in Cyprus and I didn't have a passport, what do you think they would do? Do you think they'd say, oh, don't worry, in you come. I'll tell you what, don't you go and stay in that resort that you're supposed to be staying in. We'll put you up in a hotel. Yep. We'll give you enough money so that you're not short of cigarettes and booze if you want to go out for the night. And we'll also give you a ride into town in case you want to go and see the local sites. And here's a phone. Yep. I mean, no, that wouldn't happen in Cyprus, and it shouldn't be bleeding well happening here. And
we also give them free trips to the zoo and Arsenal football games
matches,
and all of that stuff. It's just, it's insane. It is, you know, I've worked and lived across 70-something countries. Other than what we've decided to do with this insanity, you go anywhere else, they'd look at you like you're nuts.
I know.
Why would you do it?
Well, you were in Singapore for a while,
I was in Singapore for almost 10 years.
Sadiq Khan's gone there.
He has.
To exchange views on how London and Singapore could be the same.
He was actually at a place called La Pausat, which is opposite my old flat.
Is it?
Yeah. Right. So I know exactly where he was. And he's there. And the irony is, if you talk to most Singaporeans about policy in the UK, they'll agree with reform.
Yeah. Of course they would. And most sensible people don't think it's right that if you don't want to work and if you can't be bothered working and you come up with one excuse after another as to why you can't work, that you just continually get subsidised by the state for the rest of your life.
Yep,
Again, there's very few countries in the world. I lived in America. You can't do that in America.
You can't do it. You can't do it. And I remember having conversations when I lived out there where I was explaining the UK benefit system, and they'd just turn around to me and go, why would anyone work?
Yeah.
If they're going to pay for your house and you know, give you spending money and all of this stuff, then why?
But this is the thing, and I mean, occasionally when I'm feeling particularly generous, I say to myself, well, I don't really blame the individuals for not working, because
exactly that.
In fact, if you have no incentive to work, and if you do work, you're actually going to make less money, why would you do it?
It's exactly that, and everything comes back to incentive. It's one of the primary rules you have in business. You get what you incentivize. And that's why we have increasing numbers of people on benefits. It's why we have tens of thousands of people flooding across the English Channel. We've incentivized all of this. We reward the behaviour. When you have single mums in, I think it was Islington or Camden, who are earning the equivalent of 140 grand just purely on benefits, like, why would you bother to work?
Just have a few more children.
Right.
Shocking state of affairs. Anyway, Lee, good to see you.
Always good to see you.
Thank you very much indeed for popping in.
My quick correction. The migrants' trips to Arsenal is a punishment.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. I have to say, I was saying to Pooch earlier, because we were gnashing our teeth when Arsenal won the Premier League, but we're delighted when they lost the Champions League final. Not because we've got anything against Arsenal, but just because we hate Keir Starmer that much, and he's an Arsenal fan, right? So I said to him the other night, I said, I've now taken against Brazil because that guy Gabriel who missed the penalty in the Champions League final. This screen's gone off, by the way.
I know.
I was watching the Brazil game the other night, and I suddenly found myself hating Brazil. And it's completely irrational. But I'm like, it's because of Starmer. He's now sort of, his dead hand has reached all the way across the Atlantic and sort of and plucked itself into Rio de Janeiro. And
do Arsenal have potentially the worst fan base? Because you've got Starmer, you've also got Jeremy Corbyn, isn't it? He's an
Jeremy Corbyn's an Arsenal fan,
and look, I'm a West Ham fan, but...
well, welcome to the Championship, right? Yeah, Piers Morgan. I was going to say that.
Piers Morgan as well,
But Piers is all right, you see. I don't mind Piers because he's a mate of mine, but that's another story. Anyway, so we'll be talking, of course, with Mark Littlewood later on the show today, the World Cupper, which comes on at 12 o'clock after Russell Quirk. We had a great day. We didn't mention it actually so far. I don't know whether we've got clips, but I did ask for a couple of clips from the shows from yesterday.
But Charlotte will be here in a second.
But she'll no doubt have them for us soon, because I think people should see the new studio, which looks amazing. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it.
I saw it this morning. Yeah, it's amazing.
Fantastic, isn't it? So every day now we will finish this show at 10 o'clock. Russell Quirk will then do 2 hours from 10 till 12, and then from 12 midday, Mark Littlewood with his World Cupper, which is a sort of a humorous look back at some of the football action over the past 24 hours. A couple of comments here that have come in from Substack, actually, because yesterday we were able to supply Substack subscribers, paid subscribers, with a free copy of the live show that we did at the Shepherd's Bush Empire. And this one from Lorna, who's in Antigua, believe it or not, who says, well, everyone just watched the live show, loved it, well done. How fabulous for you, Mike. All of these wonderful people participating in a really super event with a great audience. So very happy for you all and every success. Believe me, Mike, when friends put themselves out there and stand for you, it means the world to you, as I'm sure you know. It certainly does. And it was a great show. And we're going to make it available to everyone. But if you want to get it for free, just become a paid subscriber to Substack. And you get all sorts of other good stuff there as well. But we'll play a clip from that coming up later on. Also, Scott on Substack says this. It was funny when Mike mentioned the new film about gold in my ear. And the subtitles translated it as gold in my ear. Well, do you know, I said this last night, that when they kept saying Cape Verde on the commentary, when Cape Verde were playing Spain. I kept hearing Kay Burley. It sounded like Kay Burley. And so it was Kay Burley versus Spain, which is probably one of her earlier incarnations, knowing Kay as I do.
It's been around long enough.
But yeah, well, true. Yeah, absolutely. I could possibly comment. Right, who are we talking to now?
We've got a little tech thing, of course. Elliot Hammer's here now.
Elliot Hammer is here. Okay. Elliot, very good morning to you.
Hello, Mike. You all right?
I'm very well indeed. Good to see you. The world is a very interesting place these days. And what are you making of it all?
Yeah, it's all bonkers.
Bonkers is a good word.
Bonkers.
Bonkers is a very good word. But thanks, Lee. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what you're up to. Tell us a bit about what you're here for.
Well, I've been invited on to talk about, the prescription of Palestine action and also the Makerfield by-election.
Yeah. Have you been up there?
Sorry?
Have you been up to Makerfield?
Funnily enough, I come from around that area. So I'm from Accrington, so I'm a good Accrington lad. Yeah. And my great auntie when she was alive, she lived in Shevington, which is a small town near Wigan, near Makerfield. And I went up to see the family back when it was half term. And we all went to a restaurant. And of course, they know I'm kind of into politics, and they were all talking about the Makerfield by-election. And funnily enough, they all knew about Reform, and they all knew about Restore as well. They all knew who Rupert Lowe was, right. And of course, they know who Burnham is as well. And they were really talking about the issues. And you were just talking with your last guest about the social media ban for under 16s, but it seems to me that everybody now gets all their political information from Tinternet, from social media, and that they know all the issues, because it's not like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that you only ever got to know about the issues because at a certain time the BBC ran a news programme at 6 and 10, and the BBC fed you what they wanted to tell you. Everybody knows about all the issues that matter to them through social media. And so they were talking about how they might vote if they're not quite in the area, they're nearby, but they were talking about why they might vote Reform or why they might vote Restore and all that kind of thing. So I think that the funny thing is of course is that if you're a voter in Makerfield, right, and somebody says to you, if you vote Burnham, you'll get Starmer out. I mean, why would you might vote Burnham and you think, yeah, great, I want to get Starmer out, I'll vote for him. So it's such a strange by-election.
Yeah, it really is. No, you make a good point, because I mean, I come from the dark days of when newspapers were the kings of the news, effectively, and you would put the newspaper together on the basis of we'll tell you what the news is, and it doesn't work like that anymore, and it doesn't work like that in broadcasting anymore either. But one of the interesting things, I was thinking about this the other day, because at the end of the day, we used to put out a first edition that would go off stone, as we used to call it, at around about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And sometimes it meant that you had to send it to places like Cornwall without the football result in it. So there'd be a football match going on say, Wednesday night, if there was a Champions League game. And if you were living in Cornwall, you'd pick up the paper in the morning and it wouldn't have the football in it. And the idea of that now is so preposterous that you'd go, that's insane, isn't it? Just ridiculous, because now people don't even watch live football as much as they used to, because they just look at the clips on Twitter or they look at the clips on TikTok, because there's the goal. I don't want to watch the whole match. People's attention span is different. But you're right, but they've all absorbed a lot more information now over the course of the last 24 hours than anybody could ever give them in a newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got all the crazy characters like Burnham, and there's not Burnham, Count Binface, and there's also a fox.
Not much difference, to be honest.
Running. There's a fox that's running as well. I mean, what's all that about? But the thing is, you can go
not
on
Lawrence
Burnham.
Fox.
No, not Lawrence Fox. No, but you can go onto Burnham's Twitter. You can go on to the Reform. The plumber guy. You can go onto his Twitter. You can find out what he's talking about, what he's actually talking about, rather than ITV have turned up and they've asked him some questions about this, that, and the other. You can actually drill down and think, right, I want to really know what this candidate thinks about such and such, whatever the issue is, whether it's student loans or whether it's housing for young people or, I don't know, woke or anti-woke or whatever. You can drill down and think, I understand what this person is really about. And of course, you get all the nonsense like the Reform guys, what he might have liked 10 years ago. Well,
right.
To be honest, I'm not interested in that. I want to know whether the candidate who he might be going into Parliament, what he thinks about such and such, what he thinks about the issues that matter to me. I'm not interested in all that nonsense. It's like the Conservative guy. So I've been able to go on to social media, find out that he stood in the 1997 general election in this seat or what used to be that seat. So it's interesting to me that I can really drill down into the issues and find out, well, he really thinks about this and she really thinks about that.
And it takes no time at all, I don't want to wish, at the risk of sounding like a pair of old fuddy-duddies here, you can literally, at the snap of your fingers, you can do what we used to have to take ages to do. Again, in newspaper terms, we used to have a library which was full of clippings, and the people that ran the library were really, really knowledgeable. And if you rang them up and said, look, I need some stuff on this, can you bring me all the stuff you've got on what happened with the Titanic or something, or who was on it, they'd find it for you, but it would take half an hour. Whereas now, you do it in 2 seconds.
And people are really able to talk about almost the strategic position as well, because a lot of people are saying, well, the right isn't organised like the left is. So the Green Party have scaled back their campaigning because they want Burnham to win, because Burnham is effectively on the progressive side, right? And people are saying, well, Restore shouldn't stand there because if they get 7 or 8%, then what they're going to do is effectively take votes away from Reform, and they're going to let Burnham come through the middle, right? But I really think, and a lot of people are saying this, is that, look, what you really don't want, if you're against Labour and if you're against progressive politics, what you really don't want, right, is Reform winning in Makerfield, right? Burnham doesn't get in, okay? And then what happens is, as we get closer to the 2029 general election, Burnham gets in near that time, okay, and then Labour are able to say, well, look, Starmer was a bit of a mess, but it's not Labour. That's not the reason why we had such a poor government. It's just because of Starmer. Burnham gets in, he gets a honeymoon bounce, and then you get Labour getting into power again in 2029, basically on a new Burnham ticket. What you really want to do, and this is the way democracy should work, you let Burnham get in, if that's what the voters want in Makerfield. Burnham then defeats Starmer, he becomes Labour leader, and then you find out that actually it's not the fact that Burnham isn't the Prime Minister and that's why Labour aren't good. It's because Labour have nothing to offer the country. That's what people want to, that's what I think people should find out now or soon, is that Labour are just dreadful. They're a terrible party. They should be nowhere near government at all, right? And it's not about who is leading them. So I think, look, if the voters in Makerfield want Burnham to get in, fine. So that means Restore should fight Reform should fight. The Conservatives should fight the election because that's what democracy is all about. Let Burnham get in if that's what happens. He's going to make a complete mess of his administration, and then people will know that voting Labour is not the way forward for this country.
Yeah, exactly right. I think they know that now already. I mean, I don't understand how anybody would vote for Andy Burnham except for the reason to get rid of Keir Starmer. You know, that would appear to be the only positive about the whole thing, even though Burnham probably be worse than Starmer because he's not even as capable as Starmer, who's completely incapable. But, you know, there we are.
Well, apparently, Burnham is the normal guy, apparently, isn't he? And that's why.
No, of course he's not, though.
Because
But
he's
of course he
normal
isn't.
guy.
But he's like a normal guy, like a serial killer's a normal guy. You know, he thinks he's a normal guy. It doesn't make him normal. He tells you he's a normal guy. It doesn't make him normal. You know, he's never had a proper job. He's only ever worked in politics. He's only ever been paid by the public purse. He's never actually had to find a way to make a living. And he's been absolutely living in a sort of gilded cage for the last several years as the mayor of Manchester, where he gets to strut about, call himself the... I mean, who calls themselves the king of anything? I mean, it's like me going, I'm the king of London, me, you know. Well, no, you're not. You can't just call yourself the king of the north, you complete prat. You're not the king of anything, are you?
He thinks he's a double R guy, isn't he? You know.
Oh yeah, he thinks he's man of the people. You know, as I said to somebody, Richard Tice was just here. You know, it would be more convincing that he was a man of Makerfield if he hadn't tried to get 26 previous MPs to stand down in order for him to run in their constituency so that he could become Prime Minister, which is what he did. So, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not buying the local lad made good cobblers.
Yeah, and Oasis have supported him, haven't they? Right? They've apparently allowed him to use one of their singles. But the same thing happened with Tony Blair.
Well, Oasis are very, very good at lots of things, but I wouldn't take their advice on politics, thanks. They're multimillionaires, socialists.
And in 1997 or 1998, I remember Oasis, they supported Tony Blair. They had their first meeting with Blair. They came out of it, and what did they say? They said, oh, he's just like the rest of them.
Yeah, exactly. They all went down to Kill Britannia's parties in Downing Street, didn't they? And all thought it was great. You know, it's the usual cobblers, you know. Let's talk a bit about the bad parts of social media, though, because Palestine Action is probably what you might describe as the result of social media. All these sort of stupid old people and stupid young people who have now apparently been prescribed as a terrorist organisation for the second time. But an awful lot of what they are driven by, you might say, is the sort of fakery that they see coming out of Palestine, and as some people call it, Pallywood, and some of the videos that get made. I mean, I tweeted one out the other day, I think it was yesterday, where basically something like, here we go, 230 male and female doctors graduated in Gaza, and there was this very nice little video of all of these kids coming out wearing mortarboards, looking very well fed and looking as if they'd had a very nice time at university. To which I said, I thought they were all starving. Well, apparently not.
Yeah. Well, I was reading the Court of Appeal judgment yesterday, and the funny thing that jumped out to me is that it's paragraph 55 of the judgment, and the Court of Appeal say, well, Palestine Action have never defended this and never brought this claim on the basis that they're not involved in terrorism. They've never defended that way.
Yeah.
All they've said is that it's not proportionate, effectively, to prescribe them. And also they said that, Shabana Mahmood's policy fettered her discretion. That's the way that they brought this claim against the Home Secretary. So they're involved in smashing things up, including, as I understand it, a police officer's physical body. So, I think they should be prescribed. They have been prescribed. I think if they appeal to the Supreme Court, they're going to lose. And good. I think that's exactly what should happen.
Yeah, exactly right. But of course, they'll continue to, be a problem, won't they? 117 of them arrested yesterday just outside the court where the decision was being handed down, because they apparently haven't got anything better to do. But I mean, it worked in the end for to stop Just Stop Oil, because the more they got locked up, the more they didn't like it. So I guess if you can the problem is, I think the police are arresting them and then letting them go again.
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky. What does a democracy do when faced with these kind of direct challenges? It's a problem for Britain. And it's really worrying as well that we have people in our country who think that it's right to smash things up, to effectively change foreign policy. And that's just not the way we do things. I mean, we do, we're supposed to be a democratic country. That's why we got the Makerfield by-election. And that's why we prescribe certain terrorist organisations.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, listen, Elliot, good to see you. And thank you very much for your contribution. And what's your bet on what happens on Thursday in Makerfield?
Yeah, I've got two actual bets on. Don't bet, kids, right? I've got two actual bets on Reform, and then I've got a cheeky bet on Restore, only because the odds were so high. But I think because Burnham's got such a kind of a personal kind of share of the vote, that he's probably gonna just nip it. But let's see.
Yeah,
Find out very soon.
I think it's going to be hard to call. Yeah, I think it's going to be very close. But Elliot, thanks very much indeed for talking to us there.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you.
Cheers, Elliot Hammer there with his take on Palestine action, but also on the whole Makerfield situation and Andy Burnham, who's a complete and utter charlatan, it seems to me. But that's for another story. We're going to speak very shortly to Will Hodgson about the whole situation regarding wind farms in this country. And what's going on with the whole net zero nonsense and the scandal of the monies that we are wasting. They keep saying there's no money for defence, but there's plenty of money for net zero, of course. Let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your Tuesday Bulletin. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a major crackdown. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube will be banned for under 16s by next spring, one of the toughest measures worldwide. Tech firms are pushing back, while ministers lobby international partners. In security news, BBC investigations link Russia to arson attacks on Starmer's properties, with evidence of efforts to stoke UK tensions. Separately, UK forces seized a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the Channel. Economy. The UK saw a 0.1% contraction in April, partly blamed on the recent Iran conflict fallout. Other notes include ongoing political pressures on defence spending and local incidents like a nursery car crash. Politics, security and child safety dominate the agenda. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Now, a very, very auspicious day yesterday happened. I came back from holiday to find that Pooch had built a new studio next door. And at 10 o'clock today, as it was yesterday, Russell Quirk will take to the stage, and he will do 2 hours after this show until midday, followed by Mark Littlewood with his World Cupper. Have a look.
Sorry, I was just messing around with
Right, let's do melts of the day, which we don't have a jingle for. We're going to ask Lembit. We're going to ask Lembit to sing it.
Well, actually, I've got something instead.
Oh no, he's reaching into his pocket.
Here's
This is
something I
worrying.
prepared. I've always got one of these on.
Love it.
Everyone's got tinnitus in the
Melts
gallery now.
of the day. Right, we're going to show you a number of clips. What are we doing first, Elena? What do you want to do? Melts of the day. Should we do the roller coaster guy? This is really, really funny. This is, right, so we talk a lot about working from home and how unproductive it is and how people game it. You know, perhaps they nip out to, pick up the kids and take the kids to school or whatever. That's all fine. But, some of them play golf. Some of them go out for the day.
11 minutes.
Some of them ride roller coasters whilst on Zoom.
What the fuck?
자, 다들 주말
All right, let's cut it after this guy.
다들 아시겠지만 이번에 장생포에 웨일스 카트가 새로
This is funny though. It's good.
우리 유튜브 채널이 죽었는지 조회수가 너무 안 나오네요.
조회수가 오르려면
남주사 앞에 뭐 선풍기라도 틀었나?
그래도 바람이 창문을 열어놔서 바람이 좀 많이 저도 속도감이 제일 중요한 포인트라고 생각을
He's got
합니다.
a green screen.
그럼 이번 주 내로 홍보하는 기회가 전달해 드리겠습니다. 근데 주사님 왜 자꾸?
Actually, that's not real. That was a.
That is very funny. So Russell's show is a mix of a bit of politics, a bit of fun, a bit of entertainment, and as we grow, it will grow into all sorts of different areas, and it will have. Lembit Opik was in yesterday doing a sort of studio partnership with him, but that was very funny. And then after that. Mark Littlewood joins us as well, and he's doing a show which is called The World Cupper, which is his take on what's been going on in the World Cup over the course. And we've got a promo here for that as well, so have a look at this.
Hi there, Mark Littlewood here, in Mike Graham's seat. But as of Monday the 15th of June, I'm going to be in a different seat for UK Live, giving you everything you need to know about the World Cup. Is it finally coming home after 60 years? I'll be broadcasting from the beautiful town of Calidore in Mallorca, which has vast numbers of sports bars for me to watch every second of every single match. We're going to have guests, chats, and don't worry if you don't really understand football or if you're not interested in it. This is going to be a sideways take on the biggest sporting tournament that mankind has ever seen. We'll never be offside, but you might sometimes see me bombing down the right wing. We'll be looking at what's happened in the previous night's games, what's going to happen in that evening's games, and we're going to be profiling as many of the countries as we can. There's 48 of them in this year's World Cup. What do you need to know about not just France and Argentina and Spain, but Curacao, Haiti, the Cape Verde Islands, the long shot minnows. Be there from noon weekdays on UK Live, joining me for a World Cupper. See you then.
The revolution will be televised. The revolution will be televised.
Mark Littlewood there mentioning Cape Verde. They played Spain last night, right? And it was one of those games where it was an incredible game, really, because Spain is supposed to be the European champions. Well, they are the European champions. They're supposed to be favourites to win the whole tournament at the World Cup. And Cape Verde managed to get a 0-0 draw with them, thanks largely to their goalkeeper, Vozinha, right? But the most incredible thing that happened was after the result came in, there's a woman called Emma Hayes, who is one of the pundits on ITV, and she is a former England football manager, I think, but she's now, I think, the manager of the American women's football team, right? And do you know what she said when the game was over? She basically said this is a great victory for, and I thought she was going to say, you know, the minnow, the small team, great victory for, you know, local football, blah, 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 whatever. No, she said it's a great victory for immigration. I was like, what? Sorry? I put it out on Twitter and people were going, yeah, I thought I'd misheard that. I got this from, Michelle. She said, "Arg, I'll give them kudos for the fact that they can turn anything into propaganda for their Fabian communistic dream." And Darren said, the players aren't even immigrants. They left or weren't there in the first place. And then it was that complete dullard Emma Hayes that said that, says Ninja. I tuned in to watch a footy game, says Sebastian. The awesome commentators managed to bring immigration into it. Geez, just talk about the effing match. Leave the politics in the dark recesses of your mind. I heard Emma Hayes say that. What the hell are they going on about, says ATG. It was just extraordinary. You know, the Portuguese were kind enough to improve their gene pool when they migrated there. So, yeah, you could say it's a victory for immigration, says NBC. I mean, it's just incredible. You know, where do they find these people? Where do they find them? How can you possibly turn that into a conversation about immigration? Just ridiculous. But anyway, here we are. Should we do a little bit of a meltdown, since it's that sort of time? So, yesterday, I explained to you how I'd had a bit of a problem with bananas. In as much as I'd ordered what I thought were 5 bananas, but it turned out I'd ordered 5 bunches of bananas. And they brought me far too many bananas, because even I can't eat bananas at that rate. So I've ended up giving 3 of them back and keeping 2 of them. So I'm still going to have to eat probably 2 bananas a day for the rest of the week, because otherwise they'll go off, won't they? But I wanted to talk about the things that you buy sometimes where you don't really mean to buy them and you wished you could buy a smaller amount of them. Like, for example, yesterday, I decided, after going to the gym, I thought, I quite like the idea of making something a bit different, something that I haven't made before, some recipe or other. I had some minced beef, and, you know, I quite often will make shepherd's pie with it, or I'll make chili, or I'll make spaghetti bolognese, or I'll make hamburgers or something like that. But I thought, you know, I'm a bit bored with all that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look in my cookbook that I've got. And I've got this cookbook which is all about mince, basically.
Where did you get it?
I nicked it from Chris Evans, a Virgin. I was going to get a coffee one day and there was this book. And I think his show had finished. And so I thought, well, nobody wants that. I'm going to take that. Quite like that, because I'm a big fan of mince. when the mother of my children met me, she said, I've never seen anyone eat so much mince in my life. And it's a Scottish thing, I think. I was raised on mince and potatoes, mince and tatties. Anyway, so I came upon this this curry dish, which was something called, I can't remember what it was called, but it required either mustard oil or ghee. And I've often thought about getting some ghee, because ghee is a sort of Indian clarified butter type thing that you cook with, right? But I've never actually bought it, because I've never been able to find it anywhere, and I've never really been that fussed about it one way or the other. But I just thought, I wonder what it would be like. Could you recreate an Indian meal like the kind you get in an Indian restaurant if you use ghee? And when I was making previous curries, they'd always said you can actually substitute ghee. You can just put a bit of vegetable oil and a bit of butter, and it's kind of the same thing. So that's always what I did. But I was in my local supermarket yesterday, and they've got a very big Asian section, and I found some ghee. And unfortunately, the smallest container of it was about half a kilo, right? The biggest was 1 kilo, and I thought, well, I don't need that much. And the recipe called for 3 tablespoons. And I put 2 tablespoons in the pan, and it was really, it's just very oily, and, you know, I'm pretty sure not very healthy. And I ended up cooking with it. I put another spoon in. But then I put it in the fridge, right? And I'm thinking to myself, there's 99% of it still left. And I don't think I'm ever going to use it again. Or at least if I am going to use it, it'll be like maybe once every couple of months or something. Because I'm not sure I enjoyed, because it made everything a bit gloopy, to be honest. And it just struck me that we all, I think, fall for this once in a while, is you buy something and there's so much of it that you buy. Like flour, for example. If you want to make, I don't know, I don't use flour very much, I don't bake very much, but if you want to make it, use it for a thickening, you know, make some gravy or something like that, you have to buy like a kilo of flour, right? And whenever I buy a kilo of flour, it always ends up getting infested with flour mites.
Weevils.
Right? What are they called?
Weevils.
Weevils.
Yeah.
And you end up having to chuck it all away, because they're horrible things. I actually made some macaroni cheese, and, you know, you have to make the cheese sauce, and I put some flour, and there was some in it, right? There were some of these things crawling around. I just put them in the pan anyway.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you?
So does he like it?
What, the macaroni?
Cheese and weevils.
He doesn't care. He'll eat anything. He'll literally eat anything. Apart from onions, he won't eat onions. Anyway, so I'm making a plea to the manufacturers, I suppose, of food. Why do you have to make everything in such big amounts? I'd like to buy, for example, a packet of flour this size, right? That size. That's all the flour I need. That would keep me for a good 6 months. You know, obviously slightly thicker than that, but, you know, that sort of size. I don't need one that's like that size. And the same thing with ghee. I could have literally bought this size of ghee, right? This is my lip stuff. If you could sell me that with ghee in it, that would have been fine. But instead I've now got a bloody great jar of it, which is going to sit in the fridge probably for about a year, and then I'm going to throw it away. I know it's not much of a meltdown, but, you know, we can't do politics all the time.
There you go.
Lesser of two weevils, very good. Weevils, was it weevils wobble but they don't fall down?
Don't fall down, yeah.
Or was that something else? Weebles. That was weebles, wasn't it? Anyway, that's my meltdown for the day. So stick that up, you jumper. Hi, Will. Will Hodgson's here, but before we talk to him, we're going to have a look at some super chats. You can walk behind me, don't worry. We don't stand on ceremony here. It's not the BBC. We prefer to get the facts straight. We don't worry about what it looks like, you know. Simon Kilford, thank you very much indeed for your generous contribution, as ever. One from Cookie Boy, stop making it so awkward to use recycling centres. What's that going to do with me? I don't make it awkward to use recycling centres, but I know what you mean. Chris, Top Man Richard, talking about Richard Tice, of course. Anything else? Or is that it? Oh, here we go. John, treasonous Starmer, public enemy number 1. Well, he's over at the G7. Nobody knows why, and nobody's talking to him. Do you think Trump will rip into Starmer at the G7? I think he will, but I think he'll do it sort of surreptitiously. I don't think he'll necessarily do it, you know, in front of anybody else, because I was listening to an analyst from America the other day from Newsmax who actually said the thing about Trump is as long as you treat Trump properly and as long as he gets the sort of respect that he wants, and as long as there's enough sort of pomp and ceremony around whatever he's doing, like when he goes to Evian, if he gets welcomed by, I don't know, the people that make the water or something, he'll be quite happy. and he doesn't necessarily want to upset the apple cart. But if people mess around with him and treat him badly, that's when he turns on them. So we'll see. He might just leave Starmer to worry about the fact that he's going to rip him a new one, and then just not ever really do it, because that would be more in keeping, I think, with his psyche. But we shall see. Right now, it's time to talk to Will Hodgson about one of the things that Trump really doesn't like. Windmills, as he calls them, and net zero. Will, very good morning to you. Nice to see you.
Hello, Mike. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. Tell us what's going on with the old net zero scenario, because Ed Miliband seems to be sort of floating in and out of consciousness at the moment. You know, is he going to become the next chancellor if Andy Burnham is prime minister? Is he going to be able to hold on to his little power base of net zero if Andy Burnham doesn't become prime minister? You know, there's a lot of moving parts, it seems to me, at the moment.
Well, it's a big consolation prize, right? If you're the energy secretary with the amount of levies you're raising on energy bills, you're kind of a second chancellor already.
Right.
So what he's going for is the big prize. Mike, I'm nervous to talk to you about wind farms because I've heard how you feel about wasting a kilogram bag of flour.
Yes. Well, I mean, I know that
the wind we're wasting off Scotland is slightly worse.
It is. Well, waste is a big issue for me. You know, because we waste so many of our resources, and I think it seems to me that there are so many better ways of doing things. Whether it's wind farms or whether it's bags of flour, you know, I don't think people are thinking straight about what they're doing.
Well, let's give the headline numbers, right?
Okay.
So last year, the British bill payer, whether they knew it or not, was going to pay wind farms £1.5 billion to turn off their turbines. Not to use the energy, but to turn off. Because the contracts we've agreed with wind farms say that even if we can't use the wind that you generate, because our transmission cables are limited, we will pay you anyway. Now, that number was £1.5 billion last year. By 2030, the number will rise to £8 billion.
Okay.
Why? Because we are still building wind farms off Scotland, even though we haven't got the transmission cables to bring them to the demand for the power in England. This is nothing short of a scandal. It's not about policy anymore.
No.
This is a scandal. So we're releasing...
It's an ideology now, isn't it? More than anything.
It is. I mean, look, there's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to reducing your carbon emissions. The approach that Ed Miliband is taking is, let's get all of our electricity from clean sources as soon as possible, at any inefficiency and at any cost, which means you are piling on wind farm after wind farm after wind farm to make sure that if the wind ever blows, you can use it. The flip side of the coin is, when it blows and you can't use it, you're paying billions of pounds to turn off. We've released a dashboard on it, actually. It's called Lost in the Wind. You can go to lookingforgrowth.uk and guess how much we are throwing away every day on wind that we can't use.
Almost in
you might
real
be shocked.
time. Yeah, I probably would be shocked.
It is in real time.
Because you know, the thing that worries me about the way that when people like yourself come in and explain this stuff, which people mostly don't know, the question I always have is who decided all of this? You know, who made the decision to say, in front of any committee that was worth its salt, this is what we're going to do? Because surely nobody with any brains would agree to it.
But I think what you're looking at is more than a series of decisions. Is there's an inevitable logic that's put in place by a set of targets, and those targets put in chain completely barking mad calls taken by apparently sensible, well-educated people in our civil service. The key ones are the clean power targets for 2030, which aim to get 95% of our electricity from clean sources. Now, this has created this headlong rush to get wind at any cost. If you are a renewable energy company, this has been a payday after a payday after a payday. The one thing to get straight in people's heads, right, who might be thinking, I either support Ed Miliband or I'm not doing my bit on the climate, is actually there's a huge space in between where we have the serious conversation. And the first thing to say is, renewable energy companies are not charities.
No.
These are huge companies that you'll recognise often from the top of your energy bill. People like SSE, people like Scottish Power. These guys negotiate hard. The way that our government negotiates is pretty flimsy.
Yes.
And that's costing us a lot.
Well, we can see that in almost every area of government, can't we? Whether it be in the healthcare section or whether it be in military procurement, whether it be, I mean, we pay over the odds for pretty much anything that we have to buy. You know, remember the famous stories of, you know, the £42 hammer that the Department of Defence buys, you know, because they need a hammer. And you go, well, why is it 42 quid? Oh, that's what they charged us. HS2, you know, I'm told that if you have a contract with HS2, you can basically bill them anything you like. And they'll pay the bill because they have no kind of, you know, auditing process by which to say, that seems a bit expensive, you know? And some of these energy companies that have been set up, these sustainable energy companies have been set up, seems to me to just make money from not producing anything. And that's their job, right?
But it's worse than that in some cases, right? Because the reason we're paying billions of pounds to turn off wind turbines is because we haven't got the infrastructure to carry it south. Now, what happens when you pay these companies billions is you have to find a replacement energy source south of this transmission bottleneck in Scotland. And quite often what you're finding is it's the same company being paid to turn off in Scotland and then to fire up a gas plant in England. So they're gaming a system. And what we are seeing is a renewable system. Ed Miliband's energy system has been captured by big renewables, which is why we're calling for, first of all, an investigation into the curtailment scandal. People act like it's not a big deal. It's a huge deal. We need to investigate it. Second, we're going to scrap the Clean Power 2030 targets because they're creating this completely absurd pressure to procure wind at any cost. And finally, we're going to pause contracts with offshore wind farms until we can calculate the true cost to the bill payer. Not the cost agreed in the contract, but that plus the cost of curtailments, plus the cost of connecting it to the grid, because the government is slightly embarrassed about how big that number will be. I think you can't be afraid of transparency. In fact, it's a necessary starting point for any debate.
But I think I'm always very suspicious of any organisation, whether it be governmental or not, that doesn't want transparency, doesn't want anybody looking into what it is that they're doing. Because that's surely the bedrock of democracy, isn't it? That we, as the people, should be able to see what they're spending our money on, because it's our money they're spending. And I mean, the thing that I find extraordinary as well is that nobody ever mentions this with so-called renewables and sustainable energy, is that it doesn't last forever. You know, wind turbines do not last forever. No. They deteriorate, they rust, they end up having to be replaced. The same for solar panels. You know, these are not things which, because they kind of give us the impression that, you put in a wind turbine and it will last forever. And put a solar panel on your house and you'll have free energy for years. No, because eventually it will deteriorate and you won't be able to use it anymore.
And when you replace these things, of course, you can't always replace them with British production and British products. A lot of the time you are reliant on a supply chain, which is from China. So the notion that this transition is going to remove any dependency means that we have no reliance on overseas energy sources or energy production. It's not quite right. And my thing is, I'm a fan of clean power, right? All I'm saying is I'm not a fan of clean power at any cost.
Yeah, I'm like you.
The first point
I say the same thing about electric cars. You know, if you make me an electric car that is not from China and is cheaper than the petrol car that I've currently got and as good, then I'll buy one. But, you know, don't tell me to buy one because it's the right thing to do, because it's £10,000 more.
Well, that, I think, sums up the entire issue, right? And too often we think there is a trade-off between making electricity cheap or doing the right thing by climate change. They're the same thing, right? And I'll explain why. Britain has had some of the highest electricity prices in the world, which obviously is a huge burden for our people, the cost of living, but also for our industries. It's also the case that we've not done that so as to make amazing progress on climate. One of the key things on climate change is, can you electrify your economy? Can you persuade people to ditch a petrol car for an electric car, a gas boiler for a heat pump? And what's the key thing about adopting an electric substitute? The cost of electricity.
The cost of electricity, but also...
So Britain's rock bottom of the table in terms of heat pump adoption in Europe,
but
because
also,
it's too expensive.
But also the efficiency of the individual, application, if you like, because everybody knows, for example, if you've got a gas boiler, one of those combi boilers, it's about the most efficient way to heat your water and to heat your house, probably, that there is, right? Nobody that I know that's ever bought a heat pump is happy with it.
No, heat pumps are actually more efficient, right? So I'm not going to throw...
Well, I've never heard anyone who's got a heat pump say that they've got a good way of heating their house.
Right. It's typically speaking that this, the research behind it is, and I need to say this, Mike, so I'm balanced on all of it. I'm not here just to do down the entire agenda about kind of reducing carbon emissions. If you electrified your grid, but you got your electricity from gas, and everyone had a heat pump rather than a gas boiler, you would use far less gas because...
You would?
Heat pumps are more efficient. So,
they're more efficient in what sense, though?
But I'm trying to bring attention to the one thing, which is, if you can make electricity cheap and get people to use electric solutions, you are going to do two things. You're going to go to the cost of living and the burden on our industries of high energy prices. Also, you're going to accelerate the electrification of the system and reduce our carbon footprint. What I'm saying is, Ed Miliband's net zero goals are not the only way for Britain to pursue its objectives.
And also, as long as, it's interesting because the word efficient in the way that you use it, I don't know how you mean that. Do you mean it's more efficient because it uses less fossil fuel? Or do you mean that it's actually a better way to heat your house?
It uses less gas. Two things, gas boiler and a heat pump using electricity,
Yeah, I know. Well,
which is
using
generated
less,
from gas.
No, I get
use
that.
less gas.
I get that, but that doesn't make it more efficient for the consumer, if you know what I mean. Because when I talk about more efficient, I mean, does it heat the house as well?
Yeah.
Does it heat the water as well? And all the people that I know who have put heat pumps in, and many of them are very well-meaning people, and they've cost an awful lot of money, and they've spent an awful lot of money, and they would not describe those heat pumps as efficient, if you like, in heating the house as the gas boiler. And to me, that's the efficiency that counts in the end. Because if it's not as efficient at heating your house, why would you do it?
Yeah. Well, I would certainly defer to the experience of your watchers, Mike. I mean, I know that they behave very differently to a gas boiler. But the point about gas is Britain is going to be reliant on it for the foreseeable future into the 2030s, which is why this election, Aberdeen South, this by-election is going to be so fascinating. It's fundamentally the most, I think one thing we probably all agree on, one of the most astonishing bits of stubbornness from Ed Miliband is this virtue signalling refusal to lift the ban on new North Sea oil fields.
Yes.
We are going to need oil and gas well into the 2030s, whether you like it or not.
Right.
The only question is whether we're going to get it from the US, from Norway, from Qatar, or from our own reserves.
Well, isn't it curious that
he's
he's
our own
happy
industry, generate our own tax revenue?
He's happy to buy it in from Norway, where it's literally in the same field as we could get it ourselves.
Yeah. They're drinking our milkshake.
Which doesn't make any sense, does it?
That someone's going to take out the oil and generate tax revenue and generate carbon emissions.
Yeah.
Norway is using that to accelerate their transition towards a clean grid and towards a cheap and affordable grid. The UK should be doing the same thing, and we are. I don't mind someone virtue signalling in their private life, Mike.
Right.
If they're doing it in their public capacity as energy secretary,
With our money,
they need to be held to account.
And with our money, and that's the
at the
bit
expense
that
of billions.
I think most people don't like about it.
I mean, if you opened North Sea oil fields just based on what we generated through windfall tax revenue last year, you could actually benefit the average UK household to the tune of £118 per year. If you lifted the levies of energy bills, you benefit households to the tune of £182 per year.
Yeah.
There, Mike, is a £300 saving and reduction on energy bills that Labour government promised and failed to deliver, but the LFG emergency energy bill would deliver.
Yeah, interesting. Will, great to see you. We must have you back on. There's lots to talk about. Tell people how they can find your website and all the rest of it.
So that's on lookingforgrowth.uk, go /save us.
Great. Excellent stuff. Well, good luck. And we'll see you again soon.
Cheers, Mike.
Thank you very much indeed. Should we do a bit of news?
Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your Tuesday Bulletin. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a major crackdown. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube will be banned for under 16s by next spring, one of the toughest measures worldwide. Tech firms are pushing back, while ministers lobby international partners. In security news, BBC investigations link Russia to arson attacks on Starmer's properties, with evidence of efforts to stoke UK tensions. Separately, UK forces seized a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the Channel. Economy. The UK saw a 0.1% contraction in April, partly blamed on the recent Iran conflict fallout. Other notes include ongoing political pressures on defence spending and local incidents like a nursery car crash. Politics, security and child safety dominate the agenda. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Edward Hughes there. A little bit of a blast from Mark Littlewood. He seems to be trying to jump in on the show every 5 minutes, but Mark will be here at 12 o'clock. Russell Quirk, of course, coming up after me at 10 with a whole bunch of people, including Peter Barnes, who he had the big fight with last week, which should be quite funny. We're going to speak to Robert Ould in a second from the Bruges Group. But first, let's have a bit of a poll, because we've got a poll going on after our conversation with Richard Tice this morning. What would you say is the biggest sign of urban decay? Is it fly tipping? Is it potholes? Is it unkempt verges? Is it litter? Here's one that looks like it's a dead heat at the moment. Oh no, 33% litter. Yeah, litter is a terrible, terrible thing. I was watching a show just the other night. I think it was it? It might have been. I can't remember if it was a party political broadcast, but it was some news channel anyway, trying to make out that the right wing are always constantly trying to make out that Britain's in a worse state than it is. And one of the examples they used was the parade up in North London after Arsenal won the Premier League, because it was an absolute tip. You know, there was rubbish everywhere. There was bikes kind of thrown on the ground. There was thousands and thousands of people wandering about. And they were like, you know, this is really unfair because this is not what they're trying to make out. This is what London looks like all the time. Well, yeah, but it did look like that one particular time. And that's bad enough as far as I'm concerned, you know, because if you've got a load of people who don't want to pick up their own litter and they just throw it in the street, that's a problem. right? I saw a piece of footage yesterday from the World Cup after Japan played their game, and all the Japanese fans were actually picking up the litter on their side of the stadium, putting it into bags and taking it away with them. Because in Japan, that's what they do. That's their culture. Unfortunately, in this country now, the culture is to chuck bits of paper out the window, or chuck your hamburger wrapper out the window, or chuck your kebab box out the window, and just leave it rotting in the street. And that's not right. Let's talk to Robert Alls now, though, because he is the director of the Bruges Group, which has been around a very long time. And so we always like to see Robert. I think it's the first time you've been on the new show, Robert. Welcome.
Pleased to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
No, not at all. Good to see you. We've been talking about Makerfield, obviously, all this week. A couple of days to go until what's being called the most important by-election, certainly this century, I suppose you'd be right in saying. What have you been finding in your sort of research on that?
Well, it seems to be that Andy Burnham's return to Parliament and then his opportunity to take over the Labour Party, become Prime Minister, seems to have that's almost the secondary story. That's just sort of by the way. The actual real thing that seems to be happening is, of course, the dispute between Reform UK and Restore Britain. Reform UK being what was the insurgent party on the right that have now almost in a sense had their place as the insurgent party on the right being taken by Restore Britain, which is of course led by a party. Well, the leader is Rupert Lowe, who of course was forced out of Reform UK. Right. Very, very confusing situation for the voter. But there's it seems that the vote could potentially be split. Of course, no one knows vote belongs to one particular party, but this is allowing Andy Burnham to get back into Parliament. Probably he's ahead in the polls. He's in the bookmakers. He's the favourite. So that was going to be in a sense trouble for the party, because he's going to owe his position to the left, and this will accelerate Britain's decline. Because if he's Prime Minister, he will owe the left his victory and the pressure that they put on the Labour Party machine to get him that constituency in the first place, and that will be even more debt, that will be even more borrowing, and it will hurry up Britain's rush to the IMF and the bankruptcy that we're facing under this government.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of hoping that the only sort of future we can have is if the economy entirely collapses, because otherwise, if we have 3 or 2 more years of this government, whether it's Andy Burnham's government or whether it's Keir Starmer's government, I mean, the whole country is going to go to rack and ruin. And it's not just financial ruin that we're talking about. It's kind of cultural ruin. It's law and order breaking down, danger for people living here. And it will just be horrendous. So I've been sort of saying I don't think that this government will last until 2029, because something economically calamitous will happen. And they'll have to have a general election. So I still kind of hope that does happen. Because the other worry for you guys, having long been a Eurosceptic organisation, is that Andy Burnham's made no secret of wanting to rejoin the European Union. And Keir Starmer is sort of leaning in that direction as well, isn't he?
Indeed, Keir Starmer has been gradually pushing us towards the European Union. He's getting us in a situation where we're not in Europe, but we're run by Europe. And Keir Starmer has been pushing that path. And there is the fear that even whoever takes over as leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, is they will look to reassure their base and properly offer at the next election, if they get that far, the opportunity of a second referendum, something to motivate their supporters to try and get them to turn out. And Andy Burnham wants to take us back into the European. He's been sort of quite clear about that. He's then had to dial back on that somewhat, because of course the people of Makerfield, they are overwhelmingly Leave. Of course, they voted Reform UK at the recent local elections, but they're overwhelmingly Leave, and they also don't appreciate Andy Burnham's views, which is that trans women, whatever they are, I'm not quite sure exactly, can enter women's toilets and women's personal spaces. He's had to row back on that as well. But he's not a fit for the constituency, so it's quite absurd that he's actually in this position and could be Prime Minister as a result of possibly the split on the right that's happening. And this is going to be causing us serious problems, and he will be using the idea of Europe to get us back in, to motivate his own space and his own supporters.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible, isn't it, that we've come so far and fallen so far, really. I mean, the Tories were pretty bad, and I think we probably would have all agreed back in 2024 that we were fed up with them and Rishi Sunak wasn't doing a great job. But I don't think any of us quite were prepared for this disaster that has now befallen us, were we?
Well, it is an interesting position. We're facing untold levels of immigration we haven't had in our history. It's not even properly documented. They're actually not sure how many people are in the country. There's estimates, but on the amount of food that's being purchased from stores and a lot being wasted as well, that the population could indeed be much higher. They're actually not entirely sure. There's millions of people in this country that have arrived in this. In this country, and part of what we were talking about, or what you're talking about with your previous speaker about energy costs. One reason behind the enormous amount of immigration is, of course, the high energy costs. Is that, in a sense, immigration is a form of energy. Labour is a form of energy. That's something that economists such as Adam Smith, Marx, Hayek, they had all missed. When you have enormously high energy costs, as we do, because Miliband is taxing our energy at such a high level, but most of the money that we're spending on energy is going in tax. Then of course, industry can't afford to produce technological solutions. It can't afford to have technology and tooling, and it relies on cheap labour. And that's the economy that we have, a cheap labour economy, because the energy is so high. If we were to reduce our energy costs by getting rid of the ridiculous taxes that Miliband, the crippling taxes that Miliband and previous governments as well have put on our energy, if we were to have drilling in our country, use our gas reserves, our oil reserves, and perhaps, dare I say, even our coal reserves, then we'd have lower energy. We'd have less demand for the cheap labour, the migration that we have at the moment. And of course, government should stop that. But there would be less demand. There'd be less less from industry. They wouldn't be pressuring the open borders that we now have.
Well, that's it. I mean, you might have heard Will Hodgson, who was here as our last guest, who was talking about not just the expensive energy taxes that we're all paying, but the subsidies as well. Because if you and I wanted to become millionaires overnight, Rob, what you'd do is you'd form ourselves into some kind of green energy company, and you just go, right, here we go. We're going to set up the Bruges Energy Group. Director Robert Alds, CEO Mike Graham. We're not going to have to produce any wind energy whatsoever. We're just going to say we're going to produce wind energy, and they'll give you 100 million quid, basically, not to produce it. So it's a bit like that old. Remember the old set-aside stuff you used to get from the EU, where the farmers would be paid not to grow anything. Well, this is the same kind of idea. They're literally like playing tricks with your brain. They're going, well, we want renewable energy, we want sustainable energy, but because we can't actually figure out how to get it from where you're deriving it from into the national grid, we'll pay you not to bother doing anything. It's insane.
It's a corporate racket. Our taxpayers' money is going to subsidise businesses and those at the very top, people that have invested in this. They're not facing any kind of moral hazard. Then people are not producing anything, yet are getting a subsidy from the government, which is essentially our money. The state in this regard is redistributing wealth from the poorest to the absolute richest. And these things are scams, essentially. And it's something that's crippling people because the tax burden is so high. But of course, it's also meaning that we can't have real productive jobs in this country because energy costs are enormous. And so if someone's going to set up an industry, going to set up something that actually produces something, they will do so overseas where there is cheaper, more efficient labour and more available energy, more productive labour, where their people can actually have real jobs rather than the service industries that we've created here, which are essentially just recycling money that's been taken in taxation or indeed borrowing. Too many people are reliant on the state for their employment when it should be coming from productive industries that are actually making things again. And that's what we need in this country. We need a renaissance of manufacturing and of industry, but we can only do so when there is cheaper energy and more technology, and we can have a focus again, not on just service industry and the state crowding out competitive industries. We would actually have a situation where we could have the technology and the industry that made Britain great in the first place.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, one of the things you guys have been arguing about for a while is stronger independent UK defence. And obviously with the resignations last week of John Healey, the Secretary of State, and Al Carnes, his minister, defence is now back into the kind of conversation. But we don't have the money, supposedly. But I mean, the amount of money wasted on all of that, what you've just talked about, net zero nonsense and the subsidies and the taxes and all of that, you know, surely they could find money to make Britain's independent defence work better. I mean, how would you see the defence market working better?
Well, at the moment, the Labour government is pushing us to take part in European defence schemes and European schemes where there's Europe essentially decides the procurement or is in control of the procurement of resources for our armed forces, having to take part in essentially a European market. There was a time when Britain made most of the ships and military ships, merchant vessels as well for the world. Now we're struggling to build aircraft carriers that are not properly functional, to have. We've got more admirals in our armed forces than we have actually ships.
Right.
It is in our navy. It is absolutely absurd situation. We are getting our aircraft on hire purchase agreements that are essentially leased from private equity companies. In some cases, the RAF is wasting money, not through purchasing actual equipment, by leasing equipment that is owned by private equity firms. That is a waste of money, and the procurement for the armed services is absolutely dire. It's wasteful, and it's run by people in Whitehall that have absolutely no idea what they're doing, that are being eaten for breakfast by those who would be providing military equipment, but they're doing so at exceptional cost. The value for money is appalling, and the procurement is fading. And of course, the technological side, consistently, the armed forces have been getting equipment that is not working properly because, of course, Whitehall has managed this. It's become a bureaucracy, and it's failing in how it organises the supply of equipment and the procurement of goods and services for our armed forces. And this needs a radical overview. Throwing more money at the armed forces isn't the answer, because it will just mean more waste. We actually need to get to grips with the problem where there is not a competitive internal market within the UK for the provision of, you know, be that tanks or ships, or indeed planes. We need to start making things ourselves at home. We need to reshore our industry rather than going out to purchase from European countries, which are essentially their suppliers are essentially fleecing the British taxpayer again.
Yeah, that seems to be the common theme, doesn't it, in every single sort of conversation. And what happens to the taxpayer? Oh, we got fleeced again. It's absolutely unbelievable. Robert, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Robert Ulls there from the Bruges Group, telling us what he thinks is going to be the danger point of whatever happens in Makerfield, particularly if it results in Andy Burnham becoming the Prime Minister, or indeed even Keir Starmer staying as Prime Minister. I mean, that is the big problem, isn't it, at the end of the day? This is, of course, the one home of common sense that you need, the Mike Graham Show, followed at 10 o'clock by Russell Quirk with the Quirk Report. He's got a whole host of guests, and then coming up at 12 o'clock, Mark Littlewood does his World Cupper for an hour every single day this week. Of course, that will happen. Let's talk now to Ted Newson, who is here, researcher at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. We've been talking, Ted, this morning, very good morning to you, about renewable energy and the way that wasted money is really screwing up the entire economy now, because the amount of subsidy being paid to these renewable energy companies by the government, taxpayers' money, is effectively making it impossible for us to defend our own country by putting that money instead into defence.
Yes, exactly. Well, Ed Miliband has proven to take the dogmatic route every single time.
Yeah.
Last week, Keir Starmer asked him to give away a bit of his net zero budget towards the defence investment plan. Very smart idea. let's defend the realm, and let's maybe cut the sides of the net zero budget. Fair enough. Ed Miliband refused to release a penny, and it's no surprise that after that, Healy and Carnes resigned. So, look, we're seeing the crumbling of this Labour government, and it's because Ed Miliband refuses to concede net zero just is not workable. And every passing week, we see more liberty-reducing actions from him in order to justify it. I mean, this week I think he wants to ban gas heaters. He wants to ban wasteful underfloor heating.
Yeah.
He wants to ban electric towel rails. And then the week before, he wants to ban tumble dryers. So this is not a serious net zero policy. It's totally unworkable. We're already seeing the scaling back of it. This week, they're going to scale back the ZEV mandate, which has had an awful lot of reservations. Only 12% of people in a recent poll approved of the ZEV mandate, provided prices don't come down. So there's no public mandate for this. Nobody voted for it. And the sooner Ed Miliband is put out to pasture, the better.
Yeah. Tell us what that mandate is, for people who don't know what it means.
Well, this is the sale of electric cars that the government wants to essentially mandate from 2035. So you can't sell any more new electric cars from 2035. But already the car manufacturers have said this is unworkable. It simply cannot happen. And that's quite correlated to energy costs. If your production costs are ridiculously high and electric cars are more energy intensive to make than petrol cars, which they are, you're not going to see price parity, which you expected. And so a lot of the government statistics they were putting out a few years ago is wrong, because shock horror, net zero has made energy expensive. And look, it doesn't go this far. Energy permeates into every aspect of our lives. And when the energy prices are distorted through extortionate subsidies and extortionate taxes on renewables and fossil fuels, respectively, you get a skewed market. And now we're seeing we can't afford to defend our realm, and we're actually seeing food shortages because of net zero. We can't produce any fertilizer in this country anymore. So we are essentially dependent on fertilizer imports to get the food that we get at the moment. We're not food sufficient.
Right.
And so look,
if we can't produce fertilizer entirely because of the rules on net zero, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's the same with chemical plants. It's the same with oil refineries. It's the same with cement plants. We cannot do a thing, and we're losing all of our industry overseas because of net zero. And look, that's not getting carbon emissions down at all. All it's doing is offshoring it to places that are probably more wasteful than us. I mean, China still burns coal to create their stuff. If we get their coal burnt products and then get them shipped over here by boat, of course that's going to be double or so the emissions.
Yeah. Of course it is, yeah. But that's the problem, isn't it? And as I was saying earlier to Will Hodgson, I don't mind buying an electric car. I'm not particularly against it. However, what I would want is an electric car to be cheaper than a petrol car rather than more expensive, because if it's cheaper, then you're more likely to be able to sell it to me. But the idea that you're supposed to spend more money for something which is less efficient and more troublesome in many ways, because you have to charge it all the time, and there may not be a charger at your disposal when you want it to be, whereas there is always a petrol station. In the end, what on earth are they thinking? And while I'm at it, how about we have a conversation about GB Energy and my favourite, GB Energy boss, Jürgen, whatever his name is. What the hell are they doing?
I don't know. I mean, look, one of the most indicative ways that energy has gone up is we've actually seen energy consumption per capita go down over the last 30 years. You would think that as a country, we would see it tick up as people use more, people's quality of life gets better. We haven't had that in Britain. And we're in a very, very bad club here. We're looking at kind of, you look at other countries where energy consumption has gone down, and it's places like Syria, it's places like Sudan, Somalia. We're not in a very good club here. Let's just say that. And look, net zero's got that to answer for. We see with an awful lot of prime ministers, when they're on their way out, they think, or how do I get a legacy for myself? And Keir Starmer's legacy wants to be he's banning social media for kids. Rishi Sunak's legacy was that he wants to ban smoking for the next generation and vapes. And ultimately, Theresa May's was a panicked entry into a legalized net zero target. And look, we're a couple of years down the track now, 7 years since the amendment to the Climate Change Act. It's not worked. And senior Tories need to stop holding their hands up and saying, we got it wrong. Let's get this back. And the same with Labour.
And what about reforms policies on net zero? What do you make of them?
Well, I mean, I think the Tories and Reform have basically the same policy on net zero these days, which is we need to drill in the North Sea, we need to get domestic energy abundance. You factor in the total system cost of wind and solar, and it is causing these massive spikes in energy bills. So we need to start reneging on these CFD contracts, which essentially buy more offshore wind for us, pushing up prices further. I mean, if it was my choice, I'd want to see onshore gas development. We've got an awful lot of gas under our feet. It is the cheapest and cleanest way of getting gas to our power stations. And ultimately, the difference here is between power when the wind blows and the sun shines, or power on demand. And I think I know which I'd rather have.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, I'd like the cheaper kind, whatever that is, because it seems ludicrous that we have the most expensive electricity in the entire world because we have our own capabilities of generating it, and yet we import it all and we have no control over it, and it costs an awful lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a scarcity mindset, Mike, isn't it?
Yeah.
The government wants you to consume less. They want control over what you do. They want a smart meter to track your energy usage. They want an electric car, which, if they're built in China, you never know what's going on with them. I think there's been cases in the past of China putting tracking chips in it.
Right.
We've got a real problem with Chinese.
Well, the Ministry of Defence has said that if you've got a Chinese electric car, you're not allowed to park it anywhere near a Ministry of Defence installation, because it's effectively a massive listening device.
There we go. I mean, another massive goal from the government. Just last week, there was a camera caught in the Home Office, of all places,
right?
That was back to China. So, no, we're just the government's a bit of a joke at the moment. We need to get rid of net zero, and as soon as we maybe we'll get back to energy abundance.
Maybe so. That could be the understatement of the show, that, Ed. Thank you very much indeed. Government's a bit of a joke. That, of course, is Ted Newson, I should say, from the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Coming up, we're going to speak to Major Alex Watts, who's joined us. Alex, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about how useless the government is, not just at net zero, but at defence, apparently, as well. Keir Starmer's over at the G7 in Evian in France, and nobody's really talking to him because they're not even sure if he's going to still be the Prime Minister by the end of the week. So I think they might as well stop telling him anything and just tell him to pack his bags and get ready to go. Between now and then, though, shall we have some news with Edward Hughes?
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your Tuesday Bulletin. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a major crackdown. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube will be banned for under 16s by next spring, one of the toughest measures worldwide. Tech firms are pushing back, while ministers lobby international partners. In security news, BBC investigations link Russia to arson attacks on Starmer's properties, with evidence of efforts to stoke UK tensions. Separately, UK forces seized a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the Channel. Economy. The UK saw a 0.1% contraction in April, partly blamed on the recent Iran conflict fallout. Other notes include ongoing political pressures on defence spending and local incidents like a nursery car crash. Politics, security and child safety dominate the agenda. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Hi there, Mark Littlewood here, in Mike Graham's seat. But as of Monday the 15th of June, I'm going to be in a different seat for UK Live, giving you everything you need to know about the World Cup. Is it finally coming home after 60 years? I'll be broadcasting from the beautiful town of Calidore in Mallorca, which has vast numbers of sports bars.
Mark Littlewood's very good at jumping in on the show, isn't he? Russell Quirk could learn a thing or two from him because he manages to get a promo going every single hour. which is good. He's coming up at 12 o'clock with his World Cupper, of course, and you might be pleased to know as we prepare ourselves for the next sort of day of World Cup action that basically you'll know. I don't know whether actually Alex Watts will know this. Major Alex Watts, good to see you. Last night I was shocked. I was watching the Cape Verde Spain game.
I missed that.
And at the end of the game, which was 0-0, and it was a sort of plucky, underdog, managed to get a 0-0 draw with the European champions. It was all nice, and it was all great. There's a woman called Emma Hayes, who's one of the sort of woke commentators on ITV, who's apparently now the female, the manager of the American women's football team, right? And she says, after this 0-0 draw, this game is a triumph for immigration. I kind of went, sorry. I just did exactly what you did. I was busy cooking or something. I was like, what? And I put it out on Twitter, and people were like, yeah, I thought I heard her say that. I couldn't believe my ears, And she didn't even explain why it was a triumph for immigration. I presume what she meant was that a lot of these Cape Verde players have played in other leagues around, Europe or something. I don't know, but I mean, what it wasn't was a triumph for immigration. But people are obsessed with it, aren't they?
That's the problem. At the moment is people are polarised in their views, obsessed with their own views.
And the ones who want to defend immigration at all costs just think everything's great about it.
And it's every excuse to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not discuss it, not debate it.
But no, because you can't do that, because obviously if you take a different view and say, well, hang on a minute, not all immigration is actually great.
You're a racist.
You're a racist and you're a pariah and you should be left outside and you can't be invited into decent company. But tell us about your sort of journey. You worked with Bob Stewart, I understand.
Yeah. I was one of Bob Stewart's young officers. I was with him in Bosnia.
That's when I met him for the first time. I was there for a brief period,
and that was a kind of a very important period in both of our lives, actually. So I served in the military for 18 years, left as a major, and then the last 50. Well, I then worked with the defence and security industry, involved in future technology, digitisation, and that kind of thing.
Drones and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I worked with the defence industry, but with the Ministry of Defence as well. I noticed your comments before about defence spending and wastage. And then the last 15 years, I've lived in Muslim countries. So I lived in Iraq in Baghdad for 7 years as a civilian. Yeah. And then,
as a civilian, wow, were you working there?
We were doing a reconstruction project to remove explosive hazards from Iraq. That was the whole point. And it was sponsored by the UK Export Finance.
Right.
And then the last 4 years I've been in West Africa, in Muslim countries in West Africa. So I have I have a very close relationship with Islam because I've dealt with it pretty much all my working life.
Yeah.
And also on immigration, because when you're in West Africa, you're talking to the illegal immigrants. You're seeing what they do, and I have a slightly alternative view to immigration and the casualties of immigration. Right. I watched people in the Gambia, for example. We lost 350 immigrants who tried to go by boat, and then I don't know how many who were rounded up in Algeria and Libya. The fundamental problem is that the UK has become an irresistible magnet. To migrants, and these are good people. They're economic migrants. They just want a better life, and they will do anything to do that. But the casualties, the left will say, open borders and such like. But what they don't realise is that hundreds of thousands, for every one migrant that gets to the shores of Calais, there are one or two more that don't make it. And when they get rounded up in Libya, they're enslaved. The women are prostituted. This is one of the reasons why women don't do the journey, because it's too dangerous.
They don't get past Libya.
Libya and Algeria, the men are executed for body parts, and their body parts are used for medical science. That is happening. Happening now.
Yes.
And I don't think people in this country realise that we have.
But that's always been a problem for me. That literally the fact that Britain has become this magnet means it's never going to stop unless we stop being a magnet.
And the other dynamic is the human trafficking business. This is a multi-billion-dollar business, and these people are they won't stop. We can stop the boats. It will not stop unless we have. And I've looked at the deportation policies from Reform and Restore and the such like. they only look at the immediate problem.
Right.
You cannot solve the problem unless you deal with the human trafficking business, which has to be an international collaboration. And you deal with the migrant countries.
Yeah,
Either
because
by
one of the things that
sanctioning
I
them or-
noticed happening, which was interesting, was before Trump got in the second time, there was an awful lot of sort of African immigration happening on the southern border of Mexico.
Yeah.
And clearly people were moving Africans to places like Venezuela and then moving them up into the United States. And I thought, that is a massive operation. That's no longer just a sort of, localized, Kurdish character who's running a human trafficking scheme. This is a multi-million-dollar international smuggling ring.
It's a massive
right?
business, and these people, they don't care about the migrants.
Yeah.
They just want to get their money.
Yeah, right.
It's all driven by money.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got the African nation in particular. They're all subject to corrupt governments.
Yeah.
They're all poor.
Yeah.
They would prefer to come to this country, and they prefer to go to jail
Yeah.
in this country than they would to stay where they
somebody
are.
said to me the other day regarding that incident that happened in Burnley, where the girl was stabbed by a guy who turns out to be a Pakistani migrant, that somebody said to me he might be trying to get to jail because actually for him
they have a better life there.
They have a better life in jail perhaps than they do on the street.
And our prisons are now a hotbed of radicalisation.
Yeah, right.
And the Muslims the extremist Muslims, I need to be careful what I say here because they run the prisons.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. But I mean, you say they're all good people, and yes, I'm sure many of them are. But there's also some bad people.
Of course,
well,
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And
because one of the things that I've always said that people I don't think realise is that not everybody pays to come. Some people are enslaved and then owe the money when they get here, if you like.
Absolutely.
And then they go and work in the black market, or they work for drug dealers, or they work in prostitution, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And some of the people who are driving around in mopeds. I mean, one of the things I said, I've been boring people to death about Cyprus. I was in Cyprus last week. And there were many things that I didn't see there that I see here. People on mopeds. I'd completely forgotten about mopeds. For a whole week, I didn't see one. Whereas in this country, or certainly in London, you can't move for bleeding mopeds.
Yeah,
most of them being driven by illegal migrants.
Yes, well, I mean, the migrant population, the illegal migrant population, of course, is it's all polarised. They come from different places. So, I mean, legally we've brought in 24,000 Afghans.
Yeah.
Every single one of those migrants has been vetted by the Taliban.
Yeah.
So you're not telling me that they are that they're coming here because they're fleeing conflict. We've already taken out the people that supported us during the conflict.
Yes.
This is in addition to that.
Yes. But what about, does that also include the ones who were part of the sort of email leak? Because we made a mistake, didn't we? We were supposed to airlift a bunch of people out who had been helping the UK forces.
Yeah.
But then there was an email leak apparently, which resulted in them saying, "Well, we can't vet them anymore. We just bring them all."
Well, that was the problem.
Yeah.
But the people that are being sent over are not. They didn't support us during the conflict.
Yeah.
If you look at the people that supported us, we had about 350 Afghans that supported the British forces for the entire time we were there. If you add their families to that, it's about 1,500.
Right.
24,000.
Quite a small number.
Yes, it is quite a small number. 24,000 migrants being brought over here legally, and actually that was by the Conservatives.
Yeah.
And these are. I hate to say it, but they're soldiers.
Yeah.
They're being sent here
by,
likes of Afghanistan. You have the same thing from Libya. You have the same. So the migrant community.
Well, we've had the Iranians as well doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, again, the Iranians. And the problem is the Iranians are sending over the people that we don't want to come over here because the Iranian people, 80% of them are, they're good people.
No, I'm talking about the Iranian sort of IRGC types who are here,
absolutely,
who have come mostly on the small boats illegally, and who are actively plotting either against us or against Israeli, embassies here or whatever.
I mean, who knows what's going to happen in Iran?
Yeah.
I mean, the important thing about Iran is, and I'm hoping that Trump will kind of finish the job.
Yeah.
Because actually, I know we have the nuclear risk. Obviously, it's now become an economic war with the Straits of Hormuz and the such like, and I can see the incentive from Trump's perspective why he wants to push that. But the most important thing is to overthrow IRGC and free Iran because the seismic effect. See, IRGC sponsor all of the other terrorist organisations across the world. Now there will be some disruption, but if they can do that, they're cutting the head off Boko Haram, Hamas, ISIS. the
Hezbollah.
Taliban, and Hezbollah, of course, and that will have a. It's like any conflict. If you can do that, if you can cut the head off, then we can talk about that as far as Fabianism is concerned as well. If you can cut the head off, then you can you take away the legacy and the power. And then you've got to deal with the fallout from that.
The fallout from that. But I mean, of course, the history of our involvement in the Middle East, recent history anyway, isn't great, is it? You know, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan. I know it's not quite the Middle East, but you know, every time there's been regime change, it hasn't resulted in anything better.
And if you go to Iraq, for example, and you talk to the people there about Saddam Hussein, they will tell you that 60-70% of them will tell you they would prefer that Saddam Hussein was still there.
Right.
He was a dictator, but actually the country was.
But the Sunnis and the Shias kind of kept each other's. Were kept sort of apart, weren't they?
They were, and this is the problem with Iraq specifically, because you have this cocktail. The Shia community is split into two: the Sadrists and then the Hezbollah orientated ones, and then you have the Sunni community, and then you've got a relatively large Jewish community. We have the Yazidis who are almost exterminated during the war, and such like. But and that's why it has always been a hotbed, and they are also little brother to Iran. Iran, you know, hold on to Iraq with an iron fist, and it's important for Iraq to be weak, because that suits Iran's. Right. So there are so many implications of removing IRGC globally.
But it doesn't look like Trump's going to be able to do that this time, from what we're being told anyway, because a lot of people certainly in the US don't want him to go any further. And I think that's partly driving why he's doing what he's doing.
He knows that whatever happens in Iran is going to determine his success as president and his legacy as president. So he's now got this challenge that you know, if he gets it right, then he's sorted. But if he gets it wrong, that will be the end of his. That will be the end of his tenure.
Right. So talk a bit about the role of Britain in all of this, because as I was saying, Keir Starmer's off in Evian today at this G7 meeting, where he might as well not be there at all, because he's sort of an empty suit, you know, and it's kind of embarrassing for Britain to have him in charge, because all of the leaders are looking at him going, well, we don't even know if you're going to be here next week. So why would we even negotiate anything with you?
I have this theory about Keir Starmer that he and the Labour government are puppets. They're puppets to Fabianism. And the Fabian plan has been to be honest, it's been a brilliant plan, a brilliant strategy, which has been going on for 142 years now. You know, Tony Blair is still holding the tiller.
Oh, I think there's no doubt about that.
You know, Keir Starmer's been groomed. You know, to be exactly where he is right now, and this is again part of the
whole Mandelson thing could never have happened if it wasn't for Tony Blair.
It wasn't Mandelson's. It wasn't Keir Starmer deciding what Mandelson was going to do. Mandelson was telling him what he needs to do. I mean, we pitter patter around these issues. Everyone kind of knows what the problem is, but we're not allowed to talk about it. You know, we're being censored. You know, I mean, you've just seen the. You
can talk about it here, by the way. For the moment, you can talk about it here.
Well, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because I think that I think the British public are I think half of the British public are sleeping. And
well,
they don't.
You know, my theory is right, and you'll have plenty of time to get into this, because my theory is that there was a deliberate act made by Tony Blair and the Labour Party back in the early part of this century to bore everybody to death with politics, so that they would disengage from it, so that they wouldn't care what the politicians were actually up to. And it was quite a clever move, because people kind of went, you know, they seem to be running things okay, so they sort of switched off, and they didn't notice what they were doing.
But this is the problem. And then, of course, the Tories' biggest crime was that they didn't notice, and they didn't reverse what had been done by Blair.
Well, no, because they were kind of part of it. I mean, David Cameron was Blair.
Of course, he was
the mirror image
Blair
of Blair,
too, wasn't he? Yes,
I mean, there was literally. I mean, I think somebody said at one point you couldn't put cigarette paper between them, because they both more or less believed in the same thing. You know, and neither one was particularly Labourite or Conservative. They were sort of somewhere in the middle.
But we now have a situation, and again, this was all orchestrated by Blair. We now have a situation where our entire establishment, our judiciary, our academia, are all being driven by the same agenda. And unless you reverse that, then there's nothing you can do. And this is one of the problems with all these parties that are, you know, competing for the next, you know, next election. If they don't, that is the biggest priority they have when they get into power is to strip out the establishment.
Yeah.
Because if you look at all the department heads, you look at the head of the Bank of England, you look at the judiciary, they're all, and I talked about the Fabian Society before, they're all linked to the Fabian. They're all linked to the Fabians.
Tell us a bit about the Fabians and how they started and what that was all about.
Yeah, so the Fabians were created in 1884, and they were a left-leaning socialist, driven by a communist agenda. What they want is a communist state here.
Yeah.
George Orwell famously was who was left-wing, famously was invited to be part of the Fabian Society for a period of time. He then, to his horror, realised what their agenda was. It's all about evolution, not revolution.
And was it linked to the Russian Revolution in any way or anything like that, or not really?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that. But there was a link to eugenics, which is the same approach that Adolf Hitler took when he then took over. And of course, George Orwell then wrote 1984 as a result, which is ironic because that is exactly where we are right now. And Animal Farm. And he talked about the equal and the more equal parts of society. And
which is more or less what David Lammy said the other day. Isn't he? He said equality doesn't necessarily mean everybody's equal.
But this is what they want to achieve, and everything that's being done by Labour now is by design. It's not by when Keir Starmer sits up in front of the public and he talks about. He says things which wind the shit up out of everybody, which he does. That's on purpose. That's on purpose. I heard you talking before about the potential of a snap election or the general election. What I believe is happening right now is that Keir Starmer wants to create division. He wants to create division amongst all the different parts of society, whether it be the far right, as apparently we all are now, the left, and the people, the Muslim community, for example. He wants to create attrition. He wants to create civil unrest, and he wants to create. He wants to get to a stage where we're on the verge of civil war, because if he does that, he can impose martial law on this country. If he imposes martial law,
you think it's that serious?
I do think it's that serious. Yes. If he imposes martial law on this country, then the election will be cancelled. The election will be cancelled.
Well, we've already seen him cancelling elections. I mean, he's already done that, hasn't he? I mean,
but I'm talking about the general election.
Yeah, no, I know. But what I'm saying is that things happen, and people kind of still shrug and go, I was horrified when he did that. When he said, right, we're just not having elections. And they sort of made it out that it was the local boroughs and local kind of, councils that were saying that we don't want to have them. No, it was an order from central government. And then it suddenly turned out that Reform, thank God, were able to challenge it legally. And in a court of law, it was ruled to be illegal to do so. So there's still some form of safeguarding going on, but
I think there's a real risk here, and the British public, and the likes of, am I allowed to say Yaxley Lennon on this channel?
You certainly can.
Okay, so Tommy Robinson and Tommy Robinson's group of people here are, they want to respond, they want to react, they want to protect the country, they want to give a future to their kids and that kind of thing. For whatever you think of them, they want to do the right thing. But what I'm trying to get across to them is that anything violent is just you're throwing yourself out to the government.
I mean, to be fair to Tommy Robinson, and in the last sort of several encounters that he's had with the police and the public, I mean, he's urged all of his people not to get involved in any violence, and all of the things that
it's not so much him. I think he's doing everything for the right reasons. Sometimes he goes a little bit too far, but it's the people around him that they're not as motivated by the same thing, and it's those people around him that are potentially going to cause the problem. But people don't realise what. I don't think people realise what is happening at the moment. People are very angry. They're very upset.
They really are.
They're scared.
I don't think I've seen people so angry.
They're scared. I do. I'm a sort of nobody on social media, but I do talk to quite a few people, and I have conversations with them of all age groups in this country, and they're scared. But I think the risk of civil unrest is very, very high. But this is what
we've already seen it.
This is what Labour want. Because if they do that, like if they can impose martial law, and they have the ability to do so, not from our own resources, from Europe. So they can bring in the Euro army to impose martial law if they need to, and the rationale behind that is that they want to cancel the elections.
Yeah.
And they will then basically stay in power.
Well, because they can't win any other way.
You know, if you look around. They're
never going to win. The Labour government, this Labour Party, is, I don't think, ever going to win another election.
And the reason they want to hold it doesn't matter if Andy Burnham comes in as the Labour leader, it makes no difference at all. No difference at all. So,
I mean, he might be actually worse than Starmer.
Exactly, but he's driven by the Fabian agenda as well. I mean, the Fabians will decide what happens with Labour, not Andy Burnham.
But if, say, for example, you're right, and they want to create this division, and they want to then, as a result of that, a kind of a situation where martial law has to be imposed. Presumably, there's something that then happens after that, because they can't just have martial law for the rest of time.
No. But what they will do, I mean, all the working parts are in place right now. Look at the way that we are being digitally censored. We are being controlled completely. You know, this new announcement.
Well, they're trying to control us. Whether or not they're succeeding, I don't know.
Well, if they control this is what I was doing in Africa. I was doing digital security. I was doing basically digital ID. I understand what digital ID is.
Right.
The Online Safety Act that they're going to implement in September, I think. That's what the plan is, which gives them access to every single person's private messages, photographs, videos. Everybody, because they now have control of all the ISPs in this country now. They also have control of all the telecommunications organisations as well. Control of them, you know, and what we're doing isn't happening in the rest of the world. They are imposing an information shroud above us, which means that they can control us, they can censor us, they can turn us off if they want to. So, and I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but everything is in place. You know, Labour have in effect reshaped the House of Lords so that the House of Lords now will accept anything that the whole point of the House of Lords was to be the check and the balance with the Houses of Parliament. Now,
although they did do that, did they not, with the assisted dying bill, right? So the assisted dying bill got thrown out by the House of Lords. I mean, sure, they're re-entering it now into the House of Commons. So they're going to have another go. But there's still, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with what you're purporting to be the case here. I just think that, you know, it's not, yes, they may be in position to do all of these things, but we, as the populace, have to fight back. And we have to say, no,
I agree.
We're not doing that.
I agree.
And we're not going to let you do it. And here's why, and here's how we're going to stop you.
But when you have control of the House of Lords, when you have control of the House of Commons, when you have control of the judiciary, which they also do, if you can control those, you can push pretty much anything you want. It doesn't matter what we say. You know, we've already seen this with digital ID. Okay, well, we're going to do digital. No, we're not going to do digital ID. Right. But that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing it through the online.
But if, on the other hand, say for example, Starmer was the all-powerful kind of puppet of Blair, why couldn't he change the welfare rules? Because he couldn't get that past his own MPs. So I know that's a sort of slightly micro version of events.
But, I mean, what they want. Well, what they want is a welfare state. You know, they want the people of this country to be dependent on the state. That's the whole point of it is what communism is. Everyone is equal, but they're not really.
No.
They're all controlled by everyone. And actually, the motivation for the state that controls them, with all of the international conglomerate commercial organisations who are also on board, it's all about money. They're going to be fabulously well, they already are.
Well, they already are. I was having this conversation funny enough yesterday with somebody about how it's now kind of de rigueur, isn't it? If you become a politician now, you become very wealthy.
Of course,
it started happening in America many years ago, because I was talking about Nancy Pelosi, you know, and these people, and even Joe Biden, you know, who supposedly came into politics as, you know, reasonably successful individuals, but not multi-millionaires. And when they leave, they've got, you know, 50, 60, 70 million dollars, and you kind of go, well, how did that happen? They're making 120,000 a year. You know, I mean, it's nice money, but you don't save it to that extent. You know, and the same now. Tony Blair is a very wealthy individual.
And prime ministers, 300 and something million.
Yeah, prime ministers in this country didn't used to be able to do that.
No.
So something's changed.
You know, I'm sure. I mean, other prime ministers, but this is. I mean, the sad fact is that the financial aspect is one of the most major motivations. I think, and the other.
Well, most people are motivated by money, aren't they?
I think that they are, but but the end result of that is I mean, I think the British people have almost lost complete faith in the political class, almost completely, whatever party you're in.
Yeah.
Parties like Reform and Restore, I think, are offering people a ray of hope.
Yes. And so you think that they're not part of it, in other words?
I have my own views about Reform. I was involved with the Reform, and I kind of realised a few things about Reform. I think they are controlled by the establishment.
Yeah.
If I'm being brutally honest.
I think part of the problem in working through the political system in this country is that you can't be absolutely of the outside of it if you want to get into it and change it.
No.
You have to sort of join it in a way before you can change it.
But it depends how much the establishment control you.
Yes.
And I suspect that the Reform are being, I more than suspect that the Reform are being controlled. They will.
In what sense, though? In terms of what their policies are, what their aims are,
what they can and they can't do. If you look at what Reform say, they speak very well. The likes of Zia Youssef and Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, they talk extremely well. But actually, there's no meat on it. And listen to the words that they actually use, particularly people like Zia Youssef. He's very careful about the words that he uses. He's a very good orator. But if you look,
isn't that just modern politics, though? Because I mean, most politicians now will not. I would say. I mean, I don't find myself.
It's not backed up with policy.
I'm not party political at all. Never have been. I don't find really anybody in politics to be particularly truthful about what it is that they're going to do, because inevitably they don't do what they say they were going to do. I don't think Keir Starmer's done one thing that he said.
But I think Reform, if they backed up what they said with policies and commitment, I think that would make a big difference.
Yeah.
But they won't do that.
Well, they would say that they have done that.
Have you looked at that? Have you looked at their policies?
I've looked at some of them. I mean, they haven't got policy on absolutely everything.
No.
But they would tell you again that they will have. In the same way that if you look at the policy of the Tory party, it's all over the place. You don't know what they're supposedly standing for. If you look at the policies of the Labour Party, I don't know what they stand for. They keep telling us they're doing things, and they're not doing any of those things.
But if you look at the likes of Advance UK and Restore, and I know Advance UK is now being collapsed in order to make way for Restore, the one thing that they did do right was they actually put together and are putting together some consolidated, proper commitments to the things. I know they're doing the Restore doing their economic policy at the moment, for example. But Ben Habib and the Advance Party, that's what they absolutely concentrate on. At least they produced something that on paper said this is what we are going to do, and they haven't strayed from that.
No, but they don't exist anymore. So where does that leave them?
Well, I think a lot of that work is going to be migrated across to Restore.
Well, we don't know about that, because Ripple doesn't seem very sure whether he wants Ben Habib on board or not.
No, and I think there'll be.
And there's quite a lot of people in Restore who think Ben Habib should be deported because he's not white. They do. I mean, that's one of the.
I'm not.
That's one of a lot of the people that support Restore.
So you think Restore want to just deport everyone that's not white?
Well, no, I don't think Restore do, but a lot of the people that support Restore want that.
I'm not sure where this has come from. People are saying, these neo-Nazis are now joining Restore. The thing is, you get these.
Well, Rupert Lowe says he doesn't stop people from joining Restore, right? So
no, he doesn't stop. Yeah.
He's not responsible.
Neither do
for
Reform.
It. No, he's not responsible for it. He says anybody can join if they want to join. He doesn't throw anybody out. Steve Laws has been a guy that's been focused upon, who has said all of those things. And he's part of Restore, whether you like it or not. So that's the problem for them, I think.
I mean, one of the things that I think we should do, whether it be the political class or society and such like, is, and I've said the same thing indirectly to Tommy Robinson, you need to publicly out what I would call extremist, the proper far elements of your societies. I've said the same thing to the imams in London and this weekend up in Liverpool.
Right.
If they want to change the perception that people have, they need to out these people, the grooming gangs, immigration and the such like. They then the imam said to me, well, we've been doing this. They then showed me what they've been doing and saying publicly on social media. And I said, well, I haven't seen any of this. No one's seen any of this. And I then realised, of course, that they're being censored. They're being censored by the government. The bots and the algorithms that they're putting across social media. But we do need to out these people. You know, whether they be proper far right, neo Nazis, ultra ethno nationalists, and such like, because they have no place in society. But it's the responsibility of that society to do that, that group to do that, rather than. What we have at the moment is we've just got finger pointing going on left, right, and centre between political parties. That's I mean.
But the other problem for anyone who's in politics is that you need, in order to sort of serve a wider base, you have to be, and this is partly Reform's problem, you have to be slightly more mainstream, don't you? You can't be too out there, otherwise you won't get a big enough vote. Which is kind of what happened to Advance. I mean, Advance stood in Manchester, in Gorton and Denton.
Oh no, they were destroyed.
Right, and they were destroyed. They got less votes than the monster raving loon party.
I think Makerfield will be slightly different. I think with Restore and Reform.
It may well be.
In fact, I was up there this weekend, just having a look to see what was going on. I think it will be. I think it will be slightly different. But I think the problem with Reform is that they are becoming populism. Has sort of become the most important thing.
Yes.
Whether it be populism to the Muslim community, whether it be populism towards different parts of society. And I think that the British public, the core, again, you can call them the far right if you want, they see through that now. I think what will happen over the next 12 months is that there will be a transition of people from Reform across to Restore, irrespective of what happens at Makerfield. I think because people are starting to see through it. The British public aren't stupid. They're not stupid, and they can you know, and this is. You know,
but inevitably it becomes a numbers game, doesn't it? And it really depends on how many numbers you can raise.
Of course,
and if Reform win in Makerfield, for example, then that will prove that they've got the numbers. If they don't win, it won't necessarily prove that they haven't. It will just prove that some people wanted to vote Restore instead.
But the fallout of Makerfield, if Andy Burnham wins, then the Reform are going to have their hands on the end, point fingers at Restore. Restore. I mean, Restore don't really care. They have got their own policies, and they're doing, and they're kind of doing what they're doing. But actually, it doesn't really change the price of fish. I think the impact on Reform, if they don't win, publicly, is going to be quite seismic, to be perfectly honest, because they pump so much resource into there. But the thing is, the British public.
But to be fair, they did the same in Great Yarmouth and didn't make any difference. Right?
Of course. I mean, Restore destroyed.
I know. But what I'm saying is that Reform put quite a lot of effort into that. But nobody really went, they put loads of effort into it and they still lost. It wasn't a story, really.
No.
Is what I'm saying. You know.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, mainstream media have they don't want to cover Restore, for example, and what Restore are doing.
Well, they have done for the last 2 days on the Daily Mail.
But I know that all they've done is to slag them off.
Well, that's their version. That's the Daily Mail covering a story. That's what they do.
Which is you know,
they used to do that to Reform. And to Nigel Farage before they realised that he might be quite powerful. And then suddenly it changes. I used to work in newspapers, so I know how it works. But anyway, listen, it's fascinating talking to you, because we should probably move on, because as much as we could sit here all day, I've got to talk.
I've got too much stuff in my head.
No, that's good. Well, that's fine. Well, you're very welcome to come back and add more in as we go. Some comments, yes. Awesome guest, Mike. Bring him back regularly, please. There you go. Are you based here in London?
I am at the moment, yes.
At the moment? Good.
Yeah.
Major Alex has astounded me and worried me, says Alan. This is all good. Please can we have Alex as a regular, says Yachty. A very popular man. Please, Pooch, arrange to have this Major on again. Most interesting man today. Very good. Yeah, where have you been hiding? How have I not heard of you before?
I'm pretty much a nobody. I've been in Africa. I've been in Africa for the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, listen, you're very welcome.
I'd love to come back.
Very welcome to come back on a regular basis, and let's keep in touch. Is there anywhere people can see what your thoughts are?
I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Alex Watts QGM. I think I'm down there. I'm a little bit on TikTok. I'm trying to get on X. But I use my social media. I don't do it for money. I do it just to inform people and discuss with people. So I post maybe once to twice a week or something like that. But
All right. Well, very nice
But
to
I'm
see
talking
you.
to a lot of people.
Good. Well, indeed. Talking is always good. It's always the best recipe I've found, anyway. Certainly better than insurrection and civil war, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Ellie Hodges is coming up very shortly. She's going up to Makerfield this week as well. Should we do some news in the meantime?
Yeah.
Is there anything we forgot to do Pooch's Pooch yesterday. So
Yes.
maybe we'll do the news and then Pooch's Pooch, shall we?
Cool.
All right, let's do that.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your Tuesday Bulletin. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a major crackdown. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube will be banned for under 16s by next spring, one of the toughest measures worldwide. Tech firms are pushing back, while ministers lobby international partners. In security news, BBC investigations link Russia to arson attacks on Starmer's properties, with evidence of efforts to stoke UK tensions. Separately, UK forces seized a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the Channel. Economy. The UK saw a 0.1% contraction in April, partly blamed on the recent Iran conflict fallout. Other notes include ongoing political pressures on defence spending and local incidents like a nursery car crash. Politics, security and child safety dominate the agenda. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Hi there.
Get my couch cushion out of your mouth, please.
I'm just going to scooch in right here if you don't mind. Shh. We've been trying to contact you regarding your car.
This one's great. He's scratching his head upside down. Are you? Shall I say you're going up for the new?
And then I'm also I'm just gonna change and I'll be right back out, okay? Okay. Excuse me. Can I shut this? Oh.
Brilliant. Yeah, Ziggy. I've got a funny Ziggy video that I might give you. After he destroyed one of his, he got so excited to see me that he destroyed one of his fish. So we might have to get him another one. But anyway, Ellie Hodges is here. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice
Thank
to
you
see
for having me.
Not at all. You're off to Makerfield as well. It's the place to be at the moment. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, I suppose 6 months ago, never heard of Makerfield.
I've heard some stories as well from all of the people actually living in that area that they're getting so fed up with journalists and campaigners knocking on their door.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, the people that I've been speaking to say they're really friendly and they're all quite engaged with what's going on, and they feel as though they're playing quite an important role as to the next Prime Minister of the country and all the rest of it. But I'm like you. I mean, I'd be like, just stop knocking on my door. I'd put a sign up, I think, saying, they used to get those, no traders
I'm sure there are some
signs.
people that will have signs up saying, do not knock on my door.
Because the place has been crawling with journalists and campaigners and canvassers. Have you been up there before, or is this first time?
No, I haven't been up there. I know some people that live up there, so I might go and see them as well. But yeah, I'm sure they're getting absolutely fed up with people knocking on their doors. But I think the turnout will be very, very high for this by-election.
Well, I had Richard Tyson this morning, and he was saying that they believe that there will be a lot of people voting who haven't otherwise voted.
Yeah.
And I said to him, does that mean you think they're going to vote Restore? And he said no. So I think he's hopeful that Reform are going to get more of a vote out there perhaps than they
The
have
impact
before.
that Restore will have is going to be very interesting because, I'm not a Restore fan myself, but I don't think we should underestimate them because...
It's hard to judge though, isn't it?
It's really hard to judge. But they do have, I think they will do quite well in this, but it's going to be really unfortunate if Andy Burnham gets in because Restore have split the vote.
Yes. I mean, I would like to see Andy Burnham losing, partly because I think he's really, really, arrogant and ridiculously kind of assuming that he should somehow deserve to be made Prime Minister. Yeah, which I don't think he is. And also I think that if Labour lost, it would be a bit of a slap in the face to Keir Starmer as well, which because I think whatever happens, he's not long for this world anyway.
I mean, the Labour Party will go into even more chaos than it's already in, because I think the whole Labour Party at the moment has kind of been put on pause because they're waiting until hopefully what they hope Andy Burnham comes in and saves the day.
I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because this is a guy who has never been successful really at anything particular that he's done politically. You know, he's been involved with Labour since he was 15. He became a member of a think tank after he came out of Cambridge University, I think it was. And then suddenly he was working with Tony Blair's ministers. I think it was, what's his name, Smith. Who was the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. But he was his kind of spad for a while. Then he became an MP. Then he became a minister himself. You know, he was in Brown's government. He was in Blair's government. Then he worked with Ed Miliband. Then he worked with Jeremy Corbyn. You know, I mean, this guy's done all sorts of different jobs. None of them particularly well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, he does have some strengths, that he is actually quite a good political figure. I think he's quite charismatic. He's good at speaking on Question Time, even though I disagree with a lot of his, you know, what he thinks. But no one knows what he thinks because he's flip-flopped on every single major issue, on Europe, on immigration, on the trans issue. He was advocating for trans women, so men, to be in women's toilets. And now, after the Supreme Court ruling, he goes, we need to actually respect that. So I think he flip-flops massively. But he is a really good political operator, and I think that he is actually quite popular, especially amongst young people, I've found. I usually say this: if the TikTok edits are on the political person's side, it usually means they're popular with young people all over my TikTok.
Is that not just a left-wing thing, though? Like, because young people are now, I mean, I suppose in many cases you might say they've always been left-wing. I mean, when I was young, a long time ago, you tended to be more left-wing than right-wing. I mean, I was right-wing.
Well, young people
I was right-wing just because I went to FE college and my economics professor was a sort of socialist communist. So I decided to form the Young Conservative Society just to annoy him, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do.
But most young people nowadays are either Greens or left side of Labour, aren't they?
They are.
So they drive all that social media stuff.
And that's because all of their, you know, teachers are left wing and they're constantly pushing this agenda. But also because a lot of young people are left wing, as you said, it means all of their social media is then left wing.
Because
so
it's all pushed that way, isn't it?
And it's a complete echo chamber of just left wing ideology.
What do you make, by the way, of this whole plan? I mean, it's on the front of the Times today. It's age checks to access social media, and this whole nonsense that Keir Starmer announced yesterday. I mean, there's two problems I have with it, apart from the fact that the whole thing doesn't look like it's going to work, and he's even admitted that it won't work. It's not even going to come in until about next spring.
When he'll be long gone.
When he'll be long gone. So it may never come in anyway. So, I mean, a lot of people get their knickers in a twist here about what's actually coming. But they're hopeful that they're going to pass the legislation sometime before Christmas and then hopefully enact it by the spring, which is maybe a year, like almost a year from now. But as a young person, I mean, in terms of getting around it, or if you wanted to look at whatever you wanted to look at, I mean, it's not going to stop anyone, is it?
It won't stop anyone. And I think, you know, everyone knows the reason Keir Starmer's doing this is because he knows that he's going to be gone soon and he wants this to be his legacy. And so they're pushing this through. But it won't work. And the reason that he has done it is because it's extremely popular amongst parents. Because parents are fed up with their children being on social media, they've seen the dangers of it. That's the reason he's doing it. I don't think he really cares particularly if it's actually going to work. Because as we said, he won't even be there to see what happens with it, and he can blame it on somebody else. But it won't work. It definitely won't work at all, because children know ways around things. And I know, you know, from being at secondary school, my parents didn't want me on social media, etc. And I always found a way around it, because children are always one step ahead when it comes to social media, because everyone's grown up with it. So they know how it works better than the parents do.
Oh, for sure. There's no question. I mean, every generation, in my experience anyway, gets a little bit better at whatever the new technology is, you know. I mean, I'm actually not bad at it, surprisingly enough, considering how old I am. But, you know, for my oldest is 35 down to 19, and they've all got sort of slightly different skills at what they're good at doing, you know. And probably my youngest, Christopher, is probably the best at it, actually, because he's at the cutting edge of it now. Whereas Emma, my daughter, who's 35, is probably, I would say, behind him, just because, you know, she's not used to everything that's happened in the last 5 years, almost, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And also, it will become kind of cool to break the rules as well on this, and you'll have kids that will find ways around it, and they'll be on social media. And also, you know, they've banned 10 social media apps. 10 more apps will be made that won't be classed as social media, but kids will start using it as a way to communicate, and it will become, you know, a social media that isn't banned, and more apps will keep on coming out. And these tech companies don't care; they care about making money. But I think a ban on it is just ridiculous because it's also paving the way for digital ID.
Why is it so many young people miss this important issue?
I think it's because they're not educated on it enough, and I think that they don't kind of teach these things in schools, for example. So I think that we need to bring back talking about how important freedom is, and learn about some other states, for example, where they don't have freedom.
I mean, I don't mind watching it, but I wouldn't mind knowing what it is before we play it.
Yeah, no, it wasn't meant to come on just then.
Okay. Are we meant to be looking
I mean,
at
we
that?
can watch it.
What is it? What is that?
It's from when I did a speech at Trafalgar Square about digital ID. It's just being interviewed
well, let's have
about
a look at it. Well, let's
we
have a look at
shouldn't
it.
be introducing it.
Why is it so many young people miss this important issue?
I think it's because they're not educated on it enough, and I think that they don't kind of teach these things in schools, for example. So I think that we need to bring back talking about how important freedom is, and learn about some other states, for example, where they don't have freedom and how bad that is. And that's the kind of thing that I think young people need to open their eyes to. But with digital ID especially, it's going to affect young people massively because they will be forced to have it, as everyone else will be. And you know, my point all the time is that okay, now they're saying it's going to be mandatory. It's not going to be mandatory anymore. But what happens when you need a digital ID to get into every bar, every restaurant, every club you want to go to? They said that using a card would be optionary. It's not, is it? Everywhere you go, it's pretty hard to not have a debit card or a credit card now. You can't use cash in a lot of places. So.
And what are you speaking about today?
Today I'm speaking about digital ID, of course.
Yes.
But I'm just going to speak about why I think it's such a big issue. Why it's so important that people realise what's going on, why it's important that we push back. And I think my main point is when you start giving government power, or you start giving them more power, or giving these kind of systems, very rarely the government gives it back. Once they've got that power, they cling on to it.
Yes. And what's your message to other young people?
My message to other young people is do your own research. Look up these kind of issues and form your own opinions. I'm not telling anyone how to think. I would never want to do that. But what I am saying is do your own research. Don't listen to just what everyone else is telling you around you. Do your own research. And research isn't scrolling on TikTok. Research is actually reading articles, forming your own opinions. It's so important.
Thanks, Annie.
Interesting interview technique that guy has. He asks you a question and doesn't look at you.
Yeah, he just
He's
kind of
like that. That's a bit weird, isn't it? Who was he?
I actually don't know. He just interviewed me. There
Who?
you go.
Dan Aston Gregory.
All right, who's he?
Freedom fighter kind of guy.
Is he freedom fighter kind of guy?
This was at a.
So he needs to start looking at the people's interview.
It was just a Say No to Digital ID kind of event at Trafalgar Square where I gave a speech. Layla Cunningham was there. Alan Miller was there, of course.
Alan's very big on that, isn't he? He's been up in Makerfield. I think you'll probably be there when you go on
maybe,
Thursday. So
maybe.
hopefully we'll see you maybe on Thursday morning.
Yes,
or
hopefully.
Possibly, if not Friday.
Hopefully.
Because I presume you're going to stay up there, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to be quite a long night. I think it might be quite close, which means they might end up having to do a recount.
I think it will be very,
one kind or another.
very close.
And meanwhile, you're starting a YouTube channel.
Yes, I am starting
so tell
a
us
YouTube
about
channel. So I've been wanting to start one for ages, but I kind of just kept pushing it back. So I'm going to be starting one, and what it will be is mainly kind of behind the scenes stuff. So going up to Makerfield, I'll record everything, from what's happening, my journey up there, who's up there, kind of doing some quick interviews.
Right.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully it does well.
Yes. So, I mean, what's the idea of it, though? Are you going to be using it as a campaigning tool? Are you going to be just sort of being a journalist? How's it going to work?
So it'll kind of just be similar to what I do already, Vox Pops, so going out into Makerfield, talking to people. I'm also going up there for Spiked, where I'll be doing some interviews. I'm actually going to go to Andy Burnham's old constituency and speak to people there and say, what did you think of Andy Burnham when he was an MP? Because I haven't actually seen any people do that yet.
No.
And interesting to see how they would feel if Andy Burnham would go on to become Prime Minister.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because the constituency itself of Makerfield is only new from 2024.
Yes.
It was recreated as a new constituency and the boundary changes and all of that. So, I mean, although people say, they all voted to leave, or mostly voted to leave the European Union, and it's a very working class kind of red wall type seat. There isn't really a lot you can say about it because it was part of a different seat.
Yeah.
You know? And then there's all these other people that go, it's not really Makerfield, that's not really a place, it's Ashton in Makerfield, you should call it something else. You know, there's a lot of kind of, I don't know, assumptions being made about the place.
Makerfield is made up of, the constituency Makerfield is made up of different areas.
Right.
So when people say Makerfield, it's actually a
Well, it's
make-up of
basically
lots of
Greater
different
Manchester,
areas.
isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas,
exactly.
but apparently the people that live there don't consider themselves to be Mancunians. You know, this is all stuff that I've picked up just from reading over the course of the last few days about how people feel, because there's been all sorts of journalists going up and making assumptions and writing things and saying, oh, you know, well, local people don't use these words. And there's question marks as well about Andy Burnham's kind of, shall we say, loyalty to the place, because I've said this a few times this week, that Nadine Dorries wrote a piece saying that he tried 26 previous constituencies before this one, before he got Josh Simons
he's a
to
career
give up.
politician.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he didn't suddenly go, I'm going to stand in Makerfield because it's
I'm
the
so
one place I'm
passionate
so
about
passionate about Makerfield, because there were 26 other places that he tried before anybody would go, okay, then you can do that. And I think there's also going to be an element as well, it'd be interesting to know what you find out, for a lot of people there who said, well, hang on, we voted for an MP in 2024, Josh Simons, you know, we were quite happy for him to be our representative. He's now just chucked it in. And we've now got to, you know, somehow go out and vote again for somebody that we don't necessarily want.
And now it's become a battlefield of journalists, people campaigning, interviewers, everything. So I think the people of, you know, Makerfield will actually be happy once this by-election is over.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
Because I'm sure they're getting fed up. It'll be interesting to see how many people will be willing to speak to me.
And the other thing that was interesting from what Richard Tice said this morning was, I said, I presume that if they're hopeful of winning reform, obviously, you would say that. But if they don't win, obviously, they're going to then run a candidate to be Mayor of Manchester, which they could also then win. And if reform, in some ways, is a bigger prize for reform to have the Mayor of Manchester's job rather than the actual MP for Makerfield.
That's true. And I do think that Andy Burnham will win, just by, you know, a tiny bit maybe, but I do think that he will win this by-election. That's what the polls are saying anyway, but it'll be interesting because sometimes people actually go to the place and they go, this poll does not reflect when I'm actually
well, a lot of the
speaking
polls
to
as well have been really small samples. And you can never be, I mean, somebody was saying to me the other day, what's the difference? If you, you know, if you do a 2,000 sample of, say, 200,000 people or 20 million people, why not do a smaller poll for a smaller number of people? It doesn't really work like that. You need to have, I've always been told, at least 2,000 people in a poll for it to be relevant.
I think
otherwise,
that's right.
it's not worth even commenting on, you know? And all of those polls are all sort of slightly different. So
we will see. I think it's going to be it's going to be a very long night as well. But it should be very interesting.
Will you be at the count and everything as well?
Yes, hopefully.
Because I'm actually going to go off to Dan Wootton's place on Thursday night between 10 and 12. So I don't know if you ever do anything with him. But I'm going to be there doing a sort of election night special.
Oh, okay, lovely.
And then I'm going to come back.
You should have done that. That should have been your idea.
Well, we thought about doing it. But he sort of came up with the idea first, and then he asked me if I would come and join him. So I'm going to do a couple of hours there and then go home for a sleep.
Oh,
and then
lucky
come in
you.
here.
I think I'm going to end up doing.
And then I'm going to come in here at 6 though, or 5. Well, 6.
Yeah, I don't even think there was any point me actually getting a hotel, because I think by the time the results actually announced, it's going to be around 3-4 a.m.
Yeah, maybe. Well, especially if there's a recount. I mean, it depends on the exit polling as well. If the exit polling is accurate, you get a pretty good idea pretty soon after 10 o'clock, really.
Yeah, it will be really interesting. I think, it will be interesting. And I think the thing with Andy Burnham is that he's very vague in what he says. When you actually listen to Question Time,
doesn't say anything.
He comes across well, I think, for someone who is the biggest fan of him. I think he comes across well and he's very articulate.
Well, he's an articulate speaker because he's been doing it a long time.
Exactly, but when you actually listen to what he's saying, just, what are you actually saying?
This is it.
It's extremely vague.
He started doing this daily diary thing, you know, when he first started talking about how he was running everywhere. And, you know, the Daily Mail questioned that, and it was like, you know, people were going, he doesn't have the body of a runner, he doesn't look like a runner, he's a bit flabby, you know. And then he started doing this daily diary of what he was doing and what he thought and what he believed in and all of that. But the problem was that he wasn't actually saying anything. He wasn't giving any policy ideas. He wasn't suggesting what he would do if he got into power, what he would do if he became the MP. I mean, just, you know, bizarre.
I think that Question Time was really interesting to watch. And I felt that there was actually quite a lot of classism towards Robert Kenyon. When that woman stood up, and that video has now gone viral, and she's gone, I'd rather a career politician than a sexist plumber.
Yeah.
Why do you need to add plumber to that?
I know.
I did think, what's wrong with someone
That
not
was a
being
bit
a
snobby,
career
wasn't it?
politician? That sounded extremely snobby. And I think you get this from the left a lot. They go, we're the people for the working class.
Yeah.
And then when there's working class people who actually won't vote left, or for Labour specifically,
No, you're just
they
a
then
plumber.
go, oh yeah, you're just a plumber,
Yeah.
look at you.
It's
And
all right
they
for
look
the-
down on you.
It's all right for the fake plumber, Hannah Spencer, isn't it?
Oh,
She's
of course, that's
You know.
fine.
Did we? I mean, we didn't play that clip, did we? You know, the Hannah Spencer clip that we had. Is that in there? You put it in yesterday, but I don't think it appeared in the clips today.
I don't think he's put it in now.
Oh dear, never mind. Listen, we've got to go soon anyway because we're going to switch over to Russell Quirk. So if you are currently on the YouTube chat, hopefully there will be something in there which shows you how to switch it over, which we will do momentarily. But you put it up there a minute ago. Do you want to just show it to me so I can read it out? Which is
Find it.
yeah, if you could. I mean, we should really have it every day at 10 o'clock so that people can see what to do. Which is, because every day this week and from now on, we're going to have Russell Quirk at 10 with a whole bunch of guests. There you go, UK Live Online is where you're looking. So if you put UK Live Online into YouTube, if that's where you're watching it, you'll be able to find it. Hopefully. Let's see them. One from Barker, who says, this fella's part of it, funded by Rupert Lowe. I was only talking about the Major Alex. I didn't ask him, actually, if he was working for them. I don't know whether he is. Mr. Gillespie says, I propose an Ed Miliband dementia tax worth 500 billion quid. Don't know what that means. Mandy says, what happened to Substack? It's just randomly ended. Yeah, if you were watching on Substack earlier, apparently there was a bit of a problem with it. I don't know. We'll try and get that sorted for tomorrow. Starmer's last G7 anyway. Good riddance, says Preston journalist. Yeah, I mean, Starmer's wandering around looking for a mate over there in Evian, not finding one. My choice, no TV licence, no live footy, but no DEI propaganda. Instead, I watch Mark JL. Mark Littlewood lose £20 bet on Spain beating Cape Verde by 4 goals on UK Live Online. Yeah, Mark's got a few betting ideas for you, so he'll be coming up at 12 o'clock. Ellie, good luck up in Makerfield. Hopefully we'll see you. If we don't see you Thursday, we'll see you maybe Friday morning.
Yes.
Looking probably very, very tired.
I will look very
with
tired.
matches propping up your eyes
Yeah.
and all of that.
I'm not a morning person anyway, so I think I'm going to be
Well, technically, if you stay up all night, it's not the morning.
It's not the morning,
still
yeah,
the night.
exactly.
So you can pretend you're not doing the morning. Is it nearly 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
My clock says it's 10 o'clock. What does the international clock say? 10 o'clock. In Chagos Islands, it's 3 o'clock because they're 5 hours ahead, as you can see. Right, so I'm going to take off now because I'm going to leave Ellie here because I've been told I've got to go next door. Yeah. So I'm going to take off my my earpiece. I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to walk into Russell's office. Right.
Edward Hughes with the news first.
Edward Hughes with the news first while I'm doing it.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your Tuesday Bulletin. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a major crackdown. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube will be banned for under 16s by next spring, one of the toughest measures worldwide. Tech firms are pushing back, while ministers lobby international partners. In security news, BBC investigations link Russia to arson attacks on Starmer's properties, with evidence of efforts to stoke UK tensions. Separately, UK forces seized a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the Channel. Economy. The UK saw a 0.1% contraction in April, partly blamed on the recent Iran conflict fallout. Other notes include ongoing political pressures on defence spending and local incidents like a nursery car crash. Politics, security and child safety dominate the agenda. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Hi there, Mark Littlewood here, in Mike Graham's seat. But as of Monday the 15th of June, I'm going to be in a different seat for UK Live, giving you everything you need to know about the World Cup. Is it finally coming home after 60 years? I'll be broadcasting from the beautiful town of Calidore in Mallorca, which has vast numbers of sports bars for me to watch every second of every single match. We're going to have guests, chats, and don't worry if you don't really understand football or if you're not interested in it. This is going to be a sideways take on the biggest sporting tournament that mankind has ever seen. We'll never be offside, but you might sometimes see me bombing down the right wing. We'll be looking at what's happened in the previous night's games, what's going to happen in that evening's games, and we're going to be profiling as many of the countries as we can. There's 48 of them in this year's World Cup. What do you need to know about not just France and Argentina and Spain, but Curacao, Haiti, the Cape Verde Islands, the long shot minnows. Be there from noon weekdays on UK Live